have, as far as the minutes, that's done off the video.
I understand. Ready? Great, good. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting Thursday, 12/11/14. And we'll ask our town administrator to read the agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll start out with a vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. To my knowledge, there aren't any of those items to add. And then we'll have public comment period. And then the next agenda item is Cemetery Commission request for joint appointment to fill vacancy. And then a one-day liquor license request. Then we'll break into executive session to return back to open session. And the purpose of the executive session is to discuss possible litigation as it pertains to letter from attorney regarding health agent. And once we return, we'll have a staff personnel update and then look at the 2015 annual town meeting.
Okay, great, good. Any amendments to that? Any motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a second? I'll second. Further discussion? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye, opposed? All right, 2-1. The agenda moves forward. We have public comment. Anybody have any comment? No? Okay. That's quick. Okay, we have a request from the Cemetery Commission for a joint appointment to fill a vacancy. David, you want to give us the background on that?
Yes. The Cemetery Commission has a vacancy, and the chair of the Cemetery Commission, Chucky Blaney, sent notice to the selectmen requesting to see if the selectmen could support the name that they were putting forward as a candidate, which was Sue Tyler. So last meeting, Chucky Blaney was in here making that request in person, and there was talk of needing to do some more advertising, and we did not get any other inquiries in the past week, and the commission is still supporting the original name that they brought forward, and this would be for a term expiring May 15th, 2015, to fill out the term of the vacant seat.
Okay. Any discussion? First of all, is there a vote of the Cemetery Commission already to appoint
To bring
Susan?
forth the name?
Well, it's supposed to be a joint appointment, so have they had their vote yet?
They, as far as I know, the two commissioners that were available
But they met and had a formal,
and brought
process.
forward the name from them,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
The meeting was this past Sunday.
okay, all right. Sunday a week ago, or Sunday 2 days ago, 3 days ago? Okay. Okay. Any further discussion on this?
Well, it's just, it was my understanding that when we did this, because we've been through it twice before, once with the Board of Health, where we did a joint appointment to fill a vacancy, and we did it in their presence, the committee members, and that was my understanding. I think
Right.
Paul explained it last week as well. We also did it, as I recall, for a joint appointment with the water commissioners, only we had done it when their committee wasn't present, and then we had to redo it with their committee present. So it seems to me we can't do anything tonight. I'm happy to do something tonight, but we don't have that
Well,
cemetery.
I was looking at it similar to like when the tax collector, that's supposed to be kind of an approved appointment by the Board of Selectmen. I don't know,
Tax collector is elected?
or-
I mean, the treasurer, I'm
Treasurer.
sorry.
Treasurer, okay.
Yeah. So I don't have anything to say that there's a requirement that you both be in session at the same time and make the
There's a
vote.
statute 41, chapter 41, section 11. Or to put it another way, it will take 4 votes to elect someone.
What does that mean?
It has to be at least, 3 votes will elect. Because there are two cemetery.
So
Three of
your
us.
point is it's a combined vote, it's not 2 separate board votes?
Yes.
And there's currently only 2 cemetery commission commissioners.
Right.
Okay.
David, I was under the understanding that they were going to be here tonight. I don't know what happened, or if signals got crossed, or they just decided not to show.
I didn't confirm with Chucky that she was going to be here. It was an assumption that I thought that she was going to be here.
I also think that there have been, as you know, a number of water problems in the school and playing fields area, and there's also been a fair amount of site work done up by the cemetery, and I think it would be helpful to probably have that discussion with them and see whether they've looked into potential stormwater mitigation, or whether they took that into account at all when they did their work.
So
What the solutions might be.
I could request their attendance for the 18th.
I think that'd be great. I would be
Book the
prepared to
agenda.
appoint Susan tonight, but I just don't want there to be any question about the appointment.
Right. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to have them in anyway, then you can wait to do it when you're both jointly in session. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I am saying that since it sounds like they have to come in to do it correctly and have a combined vote with us, that since they're in, I'd also like to have that other conversation,
Okay.
if we can.
Who's the other commissioner? Is Chucky? Susie's not yet.
Who's the other commissioner?
Who's the
Jean Ham?
Jean Ham?
And when they had their meeting on Sunday, they did have Frank Kessler there, and they were discussing the school.
He mentioned that he'd gone to the meeting to try to see what the conversation was about that subject. It's a beautiful place up there. I hadn't been up there in quite a while, but it is, very lovely.
They're all beautiful in town.
Lovely place, but that construction in the back part is obviously, they're in the middle of doing something, and it would be interesting and also, I think, helpful to find out what, and also if there's a way to, control runoff that may or may not be contributing to the problems we're having with runoff at the playing fields, so, and school. All right, so
So there's no action.
I think, well, do we have a motion to take no action?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I'll say further discussion. I'll open it to Elliot if you have a
Any
comment.
chance Chucky could come in later tonight?
I'm trying to reach her right now.
Do they
I
have
think
to post?
we would need two members. We would need to have both of the members to vote it.
It doesn't, the gentleman traveled a great deal, that may be very difficult.
I don't know.
It depends on whether or not they got notice. There's a statute that says it has to be 7 days' notice, and there's more interpretations of that than there are lawyers and town administrators. But the best interpretation is that there has to be 7 days written notice to the cemetery commissioners, each of them individually, so they know to come, with this added 7-day notice to the public as a whole. So I don't know whether a letter went out from the Board of Selectmen to the cemetery commissioners notifying them of this. I mean, does Jean Ham know to come?
I have no idea. This has been handled through our town administrator.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's had a tough week, so.
Yeah, I understand, the staff is out and all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, apparently it's more complicated than what I originally thought, which was they had requested to meet with the selectmen and bring forth the name and make the appointment, but there is more.
It's not our appointment to make is the problem. They need to make it through a joint process, it sounds like. And we have had that experience a couple times, and I remember having that experience on another board once, so.
Okay. And they actually, it's not going to help to have them in here because their
Not
meeting wouldn't be
posted.
posted either.
Okay, all right.
So when is your 7 days up?
We
You said
posted
you've
it,
got to notify everyone in 7 days?
I didn't say that.
7 days
Paul.
it said vacancy. The selectmen shall fill the vacancy if such board fails to give notice.
If what board fails to give notice?
If the board that needs to fill the vacancy, so basically, if the cemetery's commission is not here, the selectmen shall fill such vacancy if such board fails to give said notice within the time herein specified.
30 days. They have 30 days to notify us of a vacancy,
Well, I think they notified us of the vacancy and of who they wanted to have fill the vacancy.
probably. And I don't think the 30 days has gone by since the position was vacant.
I don't think so.
So on all
So
score.
week's notice, it says here.
The cemetery commission has 30 days to notify us of a vacancy, then we have 7 days after we get the notice to fill it. It hasn't been 30 days, so the cemetery commission is not in default. The statute says if they fail to notify us, then after the 30 days, we can go ahead and fill it regardless of the fact that they haven't notified us.
So that didn't,
They notified you on the
they notified us
24th.
right away.
On the 24th of November.
Yeah, so,
It's in your
so we're
packet.
noticed. We're noticed.
Yeah.
That's good luck.
All right, so we're not going to solve this now, and I think there was a motion to take no action, so we have a second on that motion. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. And David, I don't know if this is something that you need to ask town council about, or there's some manual on this stuff, but let's just figure out absolutely what needs to be done and
I'm
get
going
this done.
to,
We're spinning our wheels on this.
I'll kick it to town council.
Okay, we have a liquor license. This is not a hearing, right? Or is it?
No.
It's just a one day? Okay.
Yes. Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the one-day license? This is just so the public knows what it is. It's a one-day license for a private event at the community center on December 20th, and the licensee is Simply Serving Roman numeral 2. And the license request is from 5:30 to 9:30 p.m. And it's been signed off by both the police department and the fire department. Okay, so with that, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye, okay, that's 3 to...
So we just need the pieces of paper to sign, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if David
and
has
I don't know if David has that, but, oh, I should say the liability insurance form is filled out, and I have a copy of the form to sign, but nothing else.
Just kind of laugh at that signature. It's kind of like yours, Mike.
That's a good signature. I like that signature. It's also
Who's
an
that,
editing
Chiefs?
mark.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We now have an executive session, so I will read the, first I'll sign this and then I'll read the language.
I don't see council here.
It's just that needs signature? And
Do we have to
you
wait for
sign
the
that?
council?
Mike, I think you signed that.
I sign it?
I don't think we need to wait for council. We can go ahead with the executive session.
Yeah, I agree with you. What's the date today, 11th? Here you go, David. Send back to David. All right, I move that the Board of Selectmen enter into executive session for discussion regarding possible litigation as it pertains to the health agent under Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM, and that discussing this in public session may have a detrimental effect on the outcome. The board will return to public session after the executive session. I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
All right, Mr. Durensis seconds, and now I'm going to do the roll call vote. Mr. Durensis?
Aye.
Mr. Caruso?
Aye.
Mr. John is aye. Having passed by a vote of 3-0, the open session is now closed. We are in executive session, and we will return to executive session. We're actually going to leave the room and go to the other room, so if anybody wants to stick around, they're welcome to do
Yeah,
that.
we'll return to open session.
Yeah, and I don't know how long that will be. But
So,
So what do we have? Oh,
Town administrator report is the next item.
staff personnel update.
Okay, very good. We're returning to open session after our executive session, and the next item on our agenda is the town administrator's report and a staff update.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, the last day of our existing town accountant, Ruth Hohenshaw, is January 2nd, 2015, and we wish her best of luck in her retirement. In the meantime, we've been very aggressive with holding a recruitment phase to see what kind of candidates are out there and where we should be aiming and what would work for Sherborn. We've advertised in some professional publications. We've advertised in accordance with the bylaw in the local paper. We've posted it on the bulletin board. We had a mix of external and internal candidates. The majority of those candidates have been reviewed. There are 2 or 3 left that came in today. As it closes, the due date closes tomorrow, the deadline for applying. But so far, the return has been very good. I've held screening meetings with each one of the people, and then I put together an ad hoc advisory group of consisting of me and Eric Kinsurf, the independent CPA, Fred Abdelahad, the chair of the personnel board, and Mary Wolf, chair of the advisory committee, so that we could meet and assess the technical skills of those top candidates. And again, that's as an advisory group to me, and it was very helpful to flesh out people's strengths and weaknesses by having those people at the table. So,
And you had some peer review, it looks like, of the candidates, people who were in that field.
right. That's the Eric, the CPA, assessed those accounting abilities. Eric's fluent in our current SoftWrite accounting package, so he would be the main go-to person if we should end up with somebody who lacks the experience in this software, so that they could hit the ground running. But so far, I think we'll be able to wrap this up in another week and get things rolling.
What's the process after that, David? Does that come to the Board of Selectmen for an appointment, or how's that filled?
No, I have a council opinion after the last town meeting that the accountant position that I can appoint after the changes in the bylaw.
Okay.
I want to go back and double check that. I'd like to have her come in because she's going to be, or the person that we get, he or she is going to be pretty much the chief financial advisor to the selectmen.
Mhm.
So we'd want to get your okay on whoever that final candidate is. But by that time, we'll have it for sure fleshed out whether it's your appointment or my appointment. It's council right now is saying it's my appointment.
Okay. Well, I hope council is at least able to be consistent in whatever they're saying, because I'd hate to have them
Right.
flip-flopping. So if they've given you a supported opinion, that's great.
Yeah, and it'll be, I'm sorry.
Before you leave, I'll wait till you're done, but I have some ideas here.
Oh, okay. So, I've talked to everybody in the finance office about what they can expect after Ruth's departure, and we have a short-term fill-in plan, and a backup CPA on the leash could come over at any time to help out, and I see a smooth transition to the next person. And I would say that they'd probably be starting, mid-January, based on their, mid to late January, based on whatever their notification requirements are. with their
Are these people
current
with town meeting type experience, David? Are they in this kind of town? Or have
Yes,
been?
there's a mix. The applicants came from the private sector, public sector. Some had experience in academia, and some had experience in municipalities with town meetings. And then we had another that had experience in several different formats of municipal government.
I just think the way things unfold here in the spring is a hard time to start, and so, that might be one factor to consider.
Right. And, it was good to have Mary Wolf and Fred at the table. Fred has a lot of private sector experience.
Mhm.
And Mary Wolf is, she's really going to be the one with the advisory committee where the accountant works with advisory doing the model,
Mhm.
the financial picture. person will be hitting the ground running, hopefully, with advisory. So it was important for her to relieve some of her anxiety about who might be stepping in there and how long it might take. So it was very productive. So I think things are going well.
Paul has some ideas.
Well, I like to avoid more OPEBs for the community. So the Personnel Board some years ago asked us for hiring to either hire full-time people or people less than 20 hours, but to avoid hiring people who work 22 hours, 23 hours, because that triggers all the health insurance and pension and everything else.
Right.
If you're going to do that, then you might as well have them be full-time and cover
Right.
a variety of jobs.
Right.
So you didn't say in this whether this was going to be a benefited position or not a benefited position, and whether it was going to whether we could, and if it was going to be a benefit position, can it be combined with other duties
Okay.
so that it would be full-time?
Right.
So instead of having 2 employees each at 22 hours with 2 sets of health insurance, we can have 1 employee
Right.
doing
I-
those 2 different functions.
I think we've been, looking to identify those situations when they come up. In this position, it's currently budgeted at 32 hours, a full-time benefited position, and it's been that way for I don't know how many years. So in the role that the town accountant serves, which, has basically, in essence, the duties of like a finance director, they need to know all of the departments, but they don't have the authority to direct anything. They have, it's a full-time position, so I can't really
So
combine it
you're
with
aiming for
anything
a
else.
full-time position?
Yeah, it would be
So more like
salaried.
35, so it's going to be salaried, so it's not dependent upon the
It-
number of hours.
Well, it's salaried now, but they list it as salaried 32 hours, so, but it's, to me, we're going to have a 40-hour position that's salaried, and we're going to get that value added of those additional expectations of hours for additional analytical work and support of some of other.
And will those hours include, like, coming to meetings, selectmen's meetings, and advisory meetings, and town meeting, and all of those things?
The
I just know in the
expectations.
past, Sometimes we haven't been able to coordinate
Right,
schedules.
yeah, as you can see, the last few months, we were trying to get into something where the first meeting of the month would be like an administrative update, and then the second meeting of the month would be more financial. When we got into the special town meeting, it got thrown off on that schedule. But the expectation is, yes, that person would be sitting at, my side, bringing in their financial report. We would have it would go out in the packet, so you'd be prepared to ask questions when they're here. And it would be, standardized monthly reporting.
So it'd be an
A
exempt
quarterly
position,
report.
so if a person actually worked 36 hours that week, they don't get overtime, they get the same salary each week. They're
Right.
expected to work whatever is needed to get the job done.
Yeah, and some weeks, during, when they're assisting us with budgets or helping advisory, it's going to be more than the 40 hours, and it doesn't cost anything. That's what the salaried idea is.
But as her supervisor, you could give her comp time or him.
In accordance with the personnel admin plan, yes, you can do that on a case-by-case basis, yeah. So if there was some sort of emergency, and we ran over, in the past, what I've done is not get into a comp time situation, but try to flex the schedule a little more. So if the work is complete, then they can, flex their Friday schedule or whatever it is so they end up with the same average number of hours without going into adding in comp time.
So David, you had said this was a 32-hour position salaried. Are you really looking to have a 36-hour position salaried or some other number of hours salaried?
I'm looking for a salaried position at 40 hours, but...
Okay, well, that's what I'm wondering, because you're talking about flex time and Paul was talking about comp time, but if you're basing that on 32 hours, it seems like you're missing an opportunity.
Right. I'm calling it a 40-hour position because I think that that's what the position needs, and, where it's salaried, saying the expectation is 40 hours isn't costing us any more.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you might take, David's been doing a great job in this effort here, knowing that, Ruth was retiring. I think you jumped right on, trying to figure out the nature of the professional you're looking for to fill the hole in that office there. And you're mindful of, structural challenges the town will continue to face, is constantly facing the treasurer role and all that sort of stuff. So he's been very mindful, but focused on, hiring a good town accountant professional who has, perhaps a larger body of skills to grow to larger roles to the extent those exist and so forth.
Right.
And I really haven't been part of the process much, but he did share with me resumes of the candidates he was interviewing today. I got the chance to look at those, and I was pretty impressed that with each one of the candidates, they brought something different to the table. I don't know which one necessarily is the right one, and we haven't really chatted about how your day of interviews went, but I think the way you went about it was very good. So I'm very impressed with what you're doing in the process. And it was important for us, it's important for us, I think, just to be sure we're comfortable with what our level of involvement should or could be in what David's doing. Because I'm under the belief that he has the full appointing authority. That's something different. It was approved at town meeting, and when we created the additional responsibilities of town administrator. And I fully respect that. So it's really a question of your comfort level, our collective, and also individually, the comfort levels of where this is going and going to wind up, and how we get there. I'm very comfortable with what he's doing and how he's going about it and what he's been able to get put in front of him to evaluate. So I'm very optimistic for where things will go.
Thank you.
Just to add on to that, whether the lawyer comes back and says that it's our appointment or it's his appointment, my view is he's going to do it, he's going to produce a candidate. Whether I have a pro forma vote proving what he's done or I don't doesn't really matter to me, because I will be looking to you to vet this person, do the whole recruitment process and so on. So to me, the legal conclusion, it may have to be a vote here or not, is really irrelevant.
Right.
For me, I'm going to follow your lead on this.
Right.
And I would say to the two of you who are on the committee searching this, that my 2 cents would be not just to look for someone who knows the software and knows how to deal with numbers, but also someone who has vision to come in and say, we need to do something different, we need to do something better. The town can save money if we structured it this way, so that somebody who is not just the numbers person, but has that extra dimension that can say, here's how to do it better.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and I just Paul, you mentioned the word committee, but it's really a screening panel. It's not a committee. It wasn't appointed by the selectmen. It doesn't report to the selectmen. David has done a good thing, I think, in getting advice on an important position to fill out his own personal knowledge. And I think it's a model for what you could do on other applications. You did something somewhat similar with the building inspector, I know.
We did that with the building inspector. We also did something similar with the fire.
That's right.
Chief, when we brought in outside fire chiefs.
And that was the outside panel, but even to do it internally. And I also just want to publicly thank Mary and Fred for they're on other committees and they're very, very busy, and they gave up their time to be part of this process, which is really important because they need to have confidence in well, particularly Mary needs to have confidence in an accountant, and Fred needs to have confidence that the hiring process is done correctly, and that that the job is filled with somebody good. So,
So the other thing I would say also is the transition. We have a baton that needs to be passed, and we have a very brief amount of time to pass that baton, and there's a knowledge base and all that. And I also commend David for doing a good job of having resources available and putting them into play or not putting them into play to facilitate ensuring that whoever you choose, whoever's chosen, hits the ground running and nothing falls through the cracks in the interim. So I think you're doing a great job
Thank you.
with having those resources available.
Thank you. I always try to have a backup to the backup.
Yeah, I think
There's
you've got
always
that, yeah.
a plan because it's
Yeah, so
always changing.
Great, good.
Yeah.
Thanks, David.
So
Anything else?
I think that process is going good, and, have some news to report, or bring the person in. So you can meet them and ask them questions, and maybe even lay out some of your own expectations of what you'd like to see, and it's just best to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Great. That's great. So the next item on the agenda is to review the notices of intent for the 2015 annual town meeting warrant. So this is not the warrant. These are placeholders for warrant articles. It doesn't preclude someone from coming up with another warrant article if they want to, but we were hoping that either most or all of the warrant articles would be reflected in NOIs that were delivered during the last month.
Right.
And it looks like we have 37 of them.
Yeah, I was surprised at the number.
Well, it looks like a lot of them are capital items, and maybe some of those will drop out, we don't know.
That's one of the things I was wondering about our flexibility to suggest that we reduce the number of items here. Going into town meeting with 37 on this list, let alone the standard articles and
The routine budget.
the
I
budget,
do suspect
all of
that some of these, like CM&D items, are going to be combined. There's some facilities articles, maybe those would be combined, I don't know.
And I can tell you that, I spoke to Gino Carlucci, the planning director. The listed as number 14, the men's zoning bylaw for lot width. That's probably not going to come forward.
Okay. Well, why don't we take them through, go through them in
Okay,
order,
sure.
and we can talk about them as we get to them.
Yeah.
Number one, it says article to reduce interest percentage for hardship deferrals.
I support this 100% already.
Yeah, I
it's
think the
great.
key to this one is just ensuring that folks are educated succinctly what we're doing here. It all makes good sense, but just so that people don't have to struggle understanding what's going on. So
This is an idea that the assessors came up with, just so that our listeners understand. There's a hardship provision for our property taxes, but right now they have to pay high interest to take advantage of it, so people don't take advantage of it. And this allows the community to decide to drop down to a lower interest rate like we have in other similar programs, like our elderly hardship interest rate. If you're having a hard time and you need a deferral and you get the deferral, why then slap you with high interest rates? So
Yeah, right.
this is one of those here that I thought was a good idea.
Do you happen to know how long a hardship deferral is good for? How long it can be
Not off the
extended
top
for?
of my head.
I think that might be something people are interested in, too. This is effectively lending money to folks who have a hardship, and what this would do, I guess, is get it down to the current Federal Reserve rate rather than the 8% that it currently is, and that's probably a good plan, as you said, Paul, for people who have a hardship. Okay, anything else anybody wants to say on this?
What I'd like to know on each of these is, do you want to schedule each sponsor to come in and talk about the article? But if we don't need to do that on an article, then great. But are you looking to have every sponsor come in to talk?
So this is just me speaking, I think we should at least make the offer to have sponsors come
Okay.
in, because part of this is advertising for them, that they get another bite at the apple to convince people that they've got a good idea. And if they don't want that, or if they think it's going to backfire on them because we're going to ask questions that that they don't want to hear, I don't know.
Okay.
I would think testing out ideas in this forum before you get to advisory, some people would want to do that, even if
Okay.
we've already decided that that's a good article,
Okay.
Anybody disagree with that?
No, I think that's well put.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So number 2 is combine tax collector and treasurer to a collector-treasurer position.
So we're really talking 2, 3, and 4 are kind of the go together.
Well, I think it makes sense to do the tax collector to the collector treasurer, because that's the general experience I have with other towns. I think it's the majority rule now. And it also carries out this notion of instead of two semi-part-time positions with all the benefits that might go with those positions. And I understand that some people don't take them or whatever. But if you can combine the positions, then you're clear there's only one set of benefits that go with that position. So it saves money, it's more efficient, it's the modern way to go. But I don't want to disturb the present tax collector in any way, and don't want her storming in here and throwing open the door and saying, "What are you saying?" So,
But but the problem is, we've touched on this 2 or 3 times now, at least twice, unsuccessfully. So the key is to be sure that we're clear what we're trying to do, why it makes sense, and get people to buy in. And part of the people that need to buy in, or we need to have a good understanding what the governance task force folks are working on and where they fall on this, because their role is important to this process. That's all. Because I think what we risked, Paul, and we saw it before Mike's time, we had 57 different versions of this same sort of effort, all of which failed. It wasn't 57, but it was a half dozen.
well, we withdrew them.
They didn't have legs. How about I'll say that? And we withdrew them. And so my point is that here we are with 2, 3, and 4, which are not necessarily doing the same thing, but they're all part of the same thrust.
Well, and there's a couple of observations I have on that. One is 2 doesn't say whether it's an elected or appointed position. So I assume if 2 were to pass, you'd also have to pass 3 and 4, otherwise, or not pass 3 and 4. But if 2 passes, you certainly don't want to have a collector treasurer and then have
There's a statute that allows you to combine these 2 positions.
into a appointed or an elected position.
Whatever.
Well, that's my
whatever it
point.
is, it is.
That's my point, Paul, because,
Self-selected.
well, we have 2 further articles. One changes treasurer to appointed, the other changes tax collector to appointed. But in 2, we don't say that's an appointed position.
Right, but they're separate because the argument to consolidate the positions applies whether or not it's appointed or elected.
What would this one be?
This number 2 combines the position regardless of whether it continues to be appointed or elected.
Okay,
So
so-
if we did nothing with the changing the positions to from elected to appointed, it would just be an elected collector treasurer.
Okay, if we pass 2, and then we pass 3, so the tax collector's appointed, and then we don't pass 4, so the treasurer's not appointed, then what do we do?
If you pass 2,
You pass 2 and 3, but you don't pass 4. How does that work? Doesn't work. That's why I'm saying, at least in 2, I would think you'd want to add, and make the position an appointed one, or something like that. You'd want to specify,
I don't think the statute allows you to do that.
well, then you'd have to have a separate article that would follow this, that would make it an appointed position.
That's why he has a separate article that follows it to make an appointed.
He doesn't. It just says tax collector and
2A.
treasurer, they're separate, they're not
this
this.
tax collector to appointed and a separate article for treasurer to appointed, so maybe those should be combined into one article?
No, because you don't know if you're going to get 2. I think you need an extra article, 2.5.
Yeah, that says if combined, then appointed. But in any event, my position on these has been and continues to be that it should be prospective to follow after the current incumbents are no longer holding these positions.
Well, that doesn't really work with the treasurer position because we know it was a 1-year temporary position, so.
Right, I understand that, but I'm talking about the tax collector.
I get it. I just, I'm not-
That you can provide for that easily if you're just looking at an article of changing the collector from elected to appointed. There's wording that I've seen that you can provide for the incumbency to continue once it changes to appointed. I'm not sure if you could do that if they were combining two separate elected positions.
All right, I think what we're learning is we've got to do a little more thinking on how these are structured and organized.
So I've just talked in general with town council on that. So there is, it appears there's one hole that we would want to plug in there. So if the tax collector and treasurer positions were combined to be a collector treasurer, then it shall be, both positions shall be made appointed.
I think what we're saying is
Separate
that's
article.
a separate article.
Elliot, question?
The order of these might be important.
Yeah, we're way far away from setting the order, but
So you don't want to say yes on one and then
yeah.
hell no on the whatever other one.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely the case. We,
Yeah.
just for today, it's just the order we have them on this list. They're not set
I
yet.
just call it to your attention.
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. No, that's a good point, really good point.
And sometimes when you see things like this, it gets confusing. And, you know, I don't know if you want to consider at some point, after we get the information, going for what's most important.
Well, we certainly don't want to be confused, because then the voters will be absolutely.
Well, and I think there's so many moving parts on this. You've made some placeholders. These may evolve. We may actually see something from the government study committee. We may like that and want to support it. We may want to do
Okay.
something completely different. There's a charter commission provision on here too that may have implications. So number 5 is, and this is something I know a little bit about. I've talked with Nancy about this. This is really a renewal of the one that she brought forward last year, and I thought did a really good job of selling, but in the end, the Senate had not amended, or the legislature had not amended the statute in a way that was, as comfortable in terms of what the authority would be. So it's now been amended, so there's clear authority, and this would be, obviously, assuming that the collector maintains its autonomy as a separate position, it would allow the collector office to be the point of collection for more departments, and the idea would be, and I don't think the wording is set yet, but the idea would be that it wouldn't be the collector alone deciding what to collect. It would be in conjunction with the town administrator and the department involved.
And for example, Nancy worked with me, or I worked with Nancy to bring out online purchase of the farm pond stickers. So she's handled that transaction, but at first she was a little uncomfortable because she was the tax collector. She didn't really have the authority to be collecting the farm pond stickers. But we got that off the ground, and so I think there's a big possibility of, a number of items that can be moved to.
And that would be
the collector's
efficiency. It's a control mechanism in terms of centralizing the handling of money for the town. And
My only comment on this is that it really should be combined with these other articles. In other words,
well, you could
whether
certainly
you
tag
have
some of it on.
because if we're going to combine, if we're going to have an appointed tax collector combined with the treasurer and so on, there has to be a collector. It can't just be a
That's
tax collector.
That's right.
So it's a necessary ingredient for Articles 2, 3, and 4 that there be a
Collector.
collector.
Okay.
So in terms of order, you might want to first make a collector and then combine the collector.
Town council's here. What do we do?
We already had our executive session. We resolved all the issues.
We did, but thanks.
We gave you credit for everything.
Nice to see you.
See you, Barbara. Next one is kennels. Dave, you had some background on this last time, or
6
Peter?
and 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip 6 and 7? I go from 5 to 8.
You're out of
Mine are ordered wrong. Okay. Here we go. All right, 5, work from home. 5 is not work from home. 6 is work from home policy.
So 6 just came in today. So if there's something placed in the wrong place in your packet.
No, that's okay.
that was the
That's fine. I just didn't see
Okay.
it.
So this is something that the Personnel Board's been working on. Basically, it's,
We want to see it, I think, before we take a position on it.
yeah, definitely. But there's there was some talk about should employees be allowed to work at home, and there are some instances that employees do work at home under extraordinary circumstances, if they're sick and they still want to work, or their snowstorm, can't make it in. Pretty much, if you're not at a customer service counter, it's not a loss to have the person work at home if there's a good reason to do that. So I think when we get this, it will say, it'll basically push it to the town administrator to approve somebody working from home. That is discouraged, but if in unusual circumstances, the town administrator can approve it if.
And this presumably doesn't apply, to police or town clerk or what, offices that we, when you
police
don't,
officer working
where the nature of the job is that they're,
But there's a lot of
in the
paperwork
office.
with the police.
well, I'm
But
sure
they-
they're already working on that at home probably, right? I think this is, you don't come in because you've got, I just don't know. I mean,
Right.
that's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, I mean, a situation that we've run into a couple of times is, a person has a child sick at home and they're going to work at home, or they, husband's sick or something, or they're stuck going to, taking a spouse or a parent to some sort of medical thing where they're going to be there all day, but they're also going to be available and want to take their laptop and continue doing work.
So you give them
It-
partial day credit or something for something like
Yeah,
that?
and it doesn't work. It doesn't really work for hourly employees, but for, a salaried employee that is paid to complete a job as opposed to the number of hours they put in, it does work, okay.
Is this something that they've gotten from a kind of a business context? Have they modeled this after anything in particular? I don't have anything against the concept. In fact, that I've worked from home myself. It's not an objection to it. I just think it's very hard to manage people who are working from home, and
Right.
I'm not sure in an organization like we have, which is a small organization with
Right.
you're the TA, that I think it's going to be very difficult on you and on other managers if this is used to any great extent.
Well, I believe that the final one that they were voting, the request would have to be made to the town administrator, so,
But then that still puts you in the position of fielding these requests and trying to be fair and getting people who object to you. It's almost better to have a set of standards in addition to discretion.
yeah. Yeah, I think what they were trying to do is remove the authority from being in the individual, boards and committees making the decision for their office
Oh,
person.
so we have that now going on?
Yeah, I think very, very limited. There's, one, maybe twice over the past year where that was, a committee granted that
Well, and I know we've had
opportunity.
complaints in here about jobs that involve town records and the concern that those are brought home and then the
Right.
town records are not where they're supposed to be.
Right, right.
Is that addressed in this article?
I think they did talk about that, but I haven't seen the final one that they voted, so, we'll have to hear more about.
Yeah, not knowing what they've got, I'm not going to speak about the merits of it or not, but I
Yeah.
do want to speak or ask a question for us. When we do the warrant, there was some confusion in the past since I've been on the board, who the sponsor is that's identified for a particular article. And here's a committee that we appoint, so the question is, if we feel comfortable having, that it's the personnel board bringing this forward because it's a personnel administration plan item that they're talking about versus us.
Right, that's,
No, well, that's not a third, I mean, that's a very key thing, because,
I think we spent a whole meeting on this last.
well, but if we're, so the question is, particularly in something like this, who's bringing it forward? If we're bringing it forward, then we're going to be having maybe lengthier discussions about it,
Yeah.
because we haven't been part of whatever was decided. That's all. So I don't know what your sensibilities are.
Well, my
and
sensibility
Paul's.
is this is a personnel support.
And that's
I mean,
my
it would be more
sensibility.
personnel board, but
Yeah, that's my
I
sensibility.
don't-
But I know
we had a
that there was
discussion
some
last year.
thought there, Paul, and I just
Yeah,
want
I
to get
think I
a
was-
feel for that.
Coming from the town council position, which is, there's only two ways for an article to be on the warrant. Either it's a citizen article, at which point it's going to have somebody's name with 10 signatories, or it's the Board of Selectmen. There is no other way.
But our practice has been to show, for instance, and the best example is planning board. You know, they always have articles, and they're the proponents that have typically been shown, at least in most years that I've looked at the warrants, last time we had this discussion. So otherwise, I feel like then if it's us, we have to own it. And by owning it, we support it, or we,
Well,
we've
not
had a
for
hand
putting
in
it
it.
on the
I
warrant.
don't know if it's support, but,
Putting it on the warrant is just a courtesy to
all right, well, that's,
organization to, and then we have a separate vote, do we support it? And many times there have been articles that we put on the warrant that we ultimately did not, as a board, support.
I
yeah.
believe we put the government study committee articles on last
No, but
year.
they were shown on the warrant, we put them on, no, but in
I
the
see, it didn't say
parentheses
Board
at
of
the end, I
Selectmen.
said
I understand. Yeah, yeah,
governance task force. So
Well,
in this
I'm
situa-
sure we're not going to resolve this tonight.
No, I'm
because it
not,
took
but
us like
put that out there,
3 meetings to
give that
resolve it
some
last
thought.
time. Yeah.
Because otherwise, I think I'd feel a little more,
Yeah.
Elliot, you had
want
a
to be
thought?
more involved.
How do other towns handle this homework?
Oh, it's a,
Don't go
it's a
there.
big mix. You should watch the tape from January, what was the date? 2014. We went through that. It's all over the map, Elliot, and, I mean, I think there's arguments on both sides.
There's no,
Well, Paul will tell you there's a
There's
right
no
way to
good
do it,
answer, okay.
and, others might disagree, but it's certainly not a uniform practice. Whether it's incorrect some places or not, I can't say.
whether there's any state laws governing it.
Surprisingly,
He's not talking about how the articles get on the
I
warrant.
thought he was
He's
talking about
about the idea of working from home.
oh, working from home, you're talking about working from home. I thought you were talking about how the articles go on the warrant, which was what we were talking about. You're talking about the
What
work.
I'm asking is, people working at home,
I was answering the wrong question.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Okay, we were
working at
beyond.
home, how do other towns handle it?
We were beyond that. Paul, you might know how other towns handle working from home, or have you run
I
into
don't know
that?
how they manage it. I know I've been participant in discussions that mirror the discussion here. That everybody wants to allow it to accommodate a more diverse workforce, particularly parents with kids or people who have seniors at home that they have to attend to. But then there's always the question of policing it, and there are always these war stories about abuse where somebody is working at
How
home
does
for...
Dover do it? How does Carlisle do it?
Hopefully,
How
the
does
personnel
West-
board has done some of that homework and can
They
answer
have,
that
they
type of
have.
question, right?
Yeah.
They've been talking about this for 4 months, 5
Yeah.
months.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get their info. All right, so what's the next one? Number 7. David, could you explain this one, if you can?
I'm not, right now, the personnel administration plan requires that as of September, all employees have an employee evaluation. The directors of each department, or the head of each department, their evaluation done by their body, who would, like, say, the Council on Aging, we get a copy in the Selectmen's office and we file that. The personnel admin plan provides that each office retains their personnel records, so we don't get copies of other employee evaluations that are below that department head level. I think that that's what they're getting at, that all evaluations should be going to a central file, basically.
Okay.
I think that that's what,
And I guess we'll have to ask them what prompts this. I mean, is it about controlling sensitive information? What's the...
well, I think there's no way of me policing whether everybody's doing their evaluations unless I go do an audit of every department and every person. And, they could say, you know, look, here's the personnel admin plan, I'm in charge of these personnel files in my department.
Okay.
I think that that's what it's,
But the town has approved you, essentially, in the state, that you're akin to the Director of Human Resources in addition to the many other roles you have.
Right.
And yet you don't have control over the personnel files. And by control, I don't mean you're the king for the day, that
Right.
they're done properly in accordance with, you know, they're done annually
Right.
as the bylaws have stated for
Right.
years, and that they're done well, and that they're properly filed so they don't get lost, and all
Right.
that kind of stuff.
and that's,
I think that's where they're going.
Yeah, and I think that that's a requirement that I could put forth, but it would still be in, you know, contradiction to
Yes,
what's
the
sitting in.
personnel
the-
administration.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, they're changing it for that, yeah.
you know, I think that's where they're going with it, and I think I support what, you know, their deliberations and what they've produced.
Okay. All right, next, so we don't have anything more to say about that one? Okay, next item, kennels.
Kennels apparently hasn't been as much of an issue in the past year as it has been in the past year. There's a kennel statute that defines what a commercial kennel is. We ran into a little bit of trouble where some outside investors purchased a property in a residential zone and opened up a kennel that qualifies as a commercial kennel and believed that they had received a license from the town clerk, when really all they did was register the business, but getting that I talked to Paul on this when this came up, and
Yeah, this notice of intent confuses two different things.
Kennel license and zoning.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like a alcohol license, state law says you have to get, if you have more than 3 dogs, I think is the way the state law says, you have to have a kennel license. The town clerk is the person to whom you go and get your license, just like when you license your dog. Like a liquor license, that's different from zoning. And the two got mixed because there was a commercial kennel that didn't have a license to have more than 3 dogs, and it was in a residential area operating a commercial business, and they didn't have the right zoning relief. So this seeks to allow kennels in town where they're currently prohibited as a matter of zoning,
as a special permit.
as a special permit.
Right.
But I think the issue that I felt we needed to address was that the town clerk was saying, and I may be misquoting her, so I apologize to her in advance. I thought she was saying, please have something in our local bylaws about the kennel licensing piece so that she has something to work with in her office, rather than trying to make sense out of state law and trying to educate people about what state law is. And that's a simple article that simply says if you have more than 3 dogs in town, you must get a kennel license from the town clerk. Please visit the town clerk between the hours of
Right.
8 and 12.
So Gino was, when Gino and I talked about this, we were thinking that if it required a special permit and that the condition is that they, once they receive the special permit, then they can obtain that license from the clerk. Because the statute says they get the license from the clerk. You're saying we should also have another article establishing that process in the clerk's office in the bylaw.
Correct, because what I understood from Gino, and I may be misquoting him, so I apologize to him, but I understood that kennels weren't allowed in the town at all. Period.
Commercial kennels.
Commercial kennels.
You can have dogs, but commercial kennels,
Right.
right.
So what would be the point of getting a commercial license from the town clerk when you couldn't
When you can't legally have one.
in town? So there were 2 pieces that were needed. The first was to provide some relief from the zoning bylaws that would allow for a commercial operation in a residential area for this type of enterprise. And secondly, to copy the state law into a local bylaw that we could enforce that would have a licensing provision, so that you have to get a license, pay your fee, and have presumably the animal control officer go over there and make sure that animals aren't being abused. It's kind of like a stable license type of thing.
What do we do about noise and other impacts on neighbors? Does that come up only through zoning, Paul, or is that a licensing issue also?
Well,
Most town clerks don't get into.
Okay, so that would be a zoning question.
with the noise,
Well, noise, there are a lot of performance standards that would need to go into any kind of kennel authority. I'm very skeptical that this is a good idea because I don't know that we have a good track record either on proposing and enforcing performance standards or on being willing to deny special permits when it's not in a neighborhood. We tend to,
Right.
if it's in the bylaw and the town contemplates that it can be permitted, we have a hard time not permitting it.
so you would end up with
Well, you could
disturbance of the peace.
Well, you could conceivably end up with, if it's allowed in any residential zone, it could be in a subdivision setting, or it could be out on a farm where it's not going to bother anybody, but this doesn't, at least the way it's phrased here, this implies that it would be with certain conditions and with a special permit, but it would be any place in town. So,
So I had attached, there was a note last spring of just some notes that I had in the correspondence with the town clerk. And then the samples from Plymouth. And you can see the kennel permit, which is very simple language on the second page.
that's very different than a zoning permit.
Right.
The kennel permit is just a license to keep the dogs. It's not, it doesn't tell you anything about the land use.
No, but that's similar to the statute.
Right. But that's not what this is. Following up on what Paul was saying
Right.
before.
There's-
This is not the proposal.
Right, this, what's attached is the licensing piece, but not the zoning piece.
Right.
The other thing is, David, on your chart, just as a note, you have yourself as the contact person. I think you meant Gino on this one.
Well, I'll tell you, this one has me a little confused because we're the proponents for licensing done by the town clerk and zoning done by the planning board. So I'm
And me as
just
the
like,
contact.
what?
Because
I don't think
I'm
I'd
a little
support being the-
confused, you know?
Well, it grew out of,
And then I got scared by the 4-dog thing. You know, that's going to go over big.
Yeah.
I mean, it grew out of, we requested that we wanted to see something come back, so.
But I thought we were looking for something more along the lines of the concerns Mike's raising. We had some folks who went and got permits, but they were subject to whatever the zoning regulations were, had a business, had to have their business shut down. It was an unfortunate experience, but it looks like they went in with eyes wide open from what I understand. However, it was brought to the attention of the then zoning enforcement officer, because some folks complained about the noise, and it wasn't a residential district. And so it seemed to me that we were more supportive of, that's a problem, having a kennel in a residential district, as opposed to allowing
That's
for
right.
kennels in a residential district. So
So if this is something the planning board and Gino wants, they probably need to explain it. I'm not getting it, and I don't think it should be coming from us.
yeah.
But just to elaborate on one thing for our viewers, you mentioned 3 or more dogs,
Yes.
but in fact, what happens with these types of kennels, you can have 40 dogs, 80 dogs, hundreds of dogs, and at some point, these become quite a impact on the community, because there's no limit to the number of dogs. There's a minimum. If you have more than 3 dogs, you have to get a kennel license. But there isn't anything that says you can't have more than 10, or you
Right.
can't have
Well,
more than
unless the
100.
facilities don't support that number of dogs, right? the animal officer comes in and says it's unsafe to have this many dogs.
Yes, yeah.
Elliot, you had a,
I think that any kennel permit, before it's given, there should be a public hearing and all the abutters notified. And,
Well, that is a process under the special permit, isn't it?
that would be a special permit, but I don't know if you can do it under the licensing statute, but that's not a bad
Yeah,
idea.
you
Well-
can, it's a local bylaw, you adopt a local licensing
you know,
bylaw, have hearings too.
I had people living next door to me 25 years ago that had dogs. They, I guess they worked at a veterinary office, and sometimes they bring the dogs.
They work from home.
Oh, okay, work from home, all right, okay. We'll look at it
They don't
that
work for
way.
the town, so it's
And,
not our business.
These dogs, they were down under the barn next door to me, it's open underneath, and they had it fenced in, and these dogs would bark all day long. And I'm telling you, no one should have to put up with what the Taylor family put up with, say, 30 years ago. And I love dogs. I used to deliver mail, and I don't know whether it's the house that you live in on Whitney Street, next door. The name was Jens, and they raised golden retrievers. And they were both attorneys, so they got a lot of certified mail. I'd have to go in to get it signed. And as that started in their driveway, about 7 golden retrievers would come charging at me and start dropping rocks, tennis balls, sticks in my mail truck. And I'd go up to the house, and here's the dogs rubbing against me, and I'm wrestling with them. And I love them. They're just sweethearts. But there are dogs, and there are dogs, and again, kennel permit. You got 3 dogs. Well, if a mummy dog has 6 or 7 pups, why
You don't have three.
you're over your limit right there. So
Yeah, but it's a
just some
health
things
issue.
to think about.
It's a health issue, not just for the dogs, but for the owners and the neighborhood. That's why the state has this licensing requirement. When you have that many dogs, you want someone like the animal control officer to go in there and make sure the animals aren't being abused, make sure there isn't some kind of unhealthy situation for the animals and for the property owners.
Nuisance to the abutters.
Yeah.
Or anyone in the neighborhood.
Similar to the stable
Yeah, it's like a
license.
stable license.
So we've got through that one now. Number 9, established a charter commission, which is another way of basically making a collective decision on how a town should be run, organized, structured.
But here's my objection to that. And it's a technical objection. Statutes say that charter commissions are set up by a process that involves a petition, and people run for office, they get on the ballot, and they get elected to be on the charter commission. And it's all statutory, and there's very little role for the Board of Selectmen. It's not really a town meeting article. On the other hand, we can create a formal committee to look to see, to revise and maybe codify a town charter. But how would that differ from the town government study committee? Because then you'd have the town government study committee doing something, and you'd have this other informal selectman-appointed charter commission.
I'm not looking for a selected appointed charter commission, Paul. There's 2 ways to do a charter. One is the statutory process, one is a special act of
Yes.
the legislature. You could establish a charter commission, and you could have the town vote on what it wanted. You have the town vote on representatives. I mean, one of the criticisms of the government study task force now is that was a temporary organization which was renewed. There's no accountability, really. They're not elected by the town. They were appointed. There's no process for replacing people if they want to come off the committee. They don't really have a charge other than to look at the government and come up with some suggestions. A charter committee is a much more formal way of doing that. There's election, you may be, your point is well taken. It may be that the way to do this is you have a petition drive and you do it through petition and it doesn't come to the town meeting. And that's, another way to do it. But I guess I'm, rapidly coming around to the view that a charter commission for our town would not be a bad thing. It would probably be a very good thing. It would move the ball forward with, all these ideas that we've been, we have 6 articles now on how to, on how to have a treasurer, tax collector structure, and we also have a government task force committee that supposedly is looking at this issue, but it's been 2 years and we don't have a proposal yet. So,
Can I ask you, then,
Yeah.
you're envisioning a special act to create a charter commission?
No.
or
Basically to bypass
a petition drive, one or the other.
I think the easiest is not having it as a town meeting article and having the selectmen vote to sponsor a petition drive for the,
Yeah, that might be a better way to do it.
yeah. And then you're following the statute exactly the way it's set up, which would be providing that the signatures were certified 60 days prior to the next election, they would be voting 9 members to a charter commission in the spring, at large, right?
That's the idea.
I mean, you could just, if the selectmen wanted to go that way,
Then that's not a town meeting article.
It may not
it's
be
not a town meeting article.
That's what
It's
David's saying.
It's a petition on our counter and,
Right.
getting the word out for people to stop by and sign it if they're interested in pursuing a charter commission.
Right. Okay. Well, we had the discussion.
Well, but if we're going to do that, we ought to decide to put that on the agenda as an item and decide whether we're going to do it or not.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because when I got this, my notes are what, why, who, when, where,
Right,
So
right.
I'd want to learn more about charter commissions,
So-
and we should have that in an open dialogue.
Maybe have town council here and tell
And
us.
have town council and all that, and so what we're trying to do, and also be sensitive to how that relates to the governance task force. I mean, I think we're on the similar page in terms of the ongoing value there versus what's in the best interest of the community, so.
That's right.
So maybe we should separate this from the warrant discussions?
If it's something that can be done without needing anything on the warrant, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, works for me.
Establish a finance department, what is that?
There's a local option statute that you can accept and adopt a bylaw. So if we're going to hire a town accountant, we can hire the town accountant now and then go into the annual town meeting and appoint, accept the statute and create.
And that has to be accepted by a town meeting, or is that something that gets accepted by the selectmen?
Ballot.
It's a ballot question?
Ballot
It
item?
ends up being a ballot question.
I see, okay.
So you can do it by,
But you have to adopt a bylaw that goes with it to implement it. So it's a town meeting vote and a ballot question.
so one way you could,
And that's what the governance task force is trying to do, but.
This is another
but
petition
differently.
thing. This is another
Well,
petition thing, it says,
It
actually.
doesn't have to be.
Or vote of the Board of Selectmen. Acceptance is initiated by petition or vote of the Board of Selectmen. Yeah, so it's not a warrant article.
well,
And then it's placed on the ballot for the next town election.
Yeah,
So that's
that's
another
what I
one we
thought.
would have to adopt and ask to have it put on the ballot.
Yes, but we have to actually have a bylaw, so you accept it, but you also have to adopt the bylaw, because.
So this is the placeholder for the bylaw, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Gotcha, okay.
so governance, they had us put on 2 placeholders. One is for this purpose, which we don't have exactly what came out of that. And I'm not sure they've decided on that yet. The other article was, it looked to be the question pointed to the town, does the town support appointed tax collector and an appointed treasurer?
What does that do?
Well,
Which one was that?
we don't
one?
really, I don't,
Which article is that?
That's
Number 18.
redundant to what we had for the earlier ones, yes?
It is, but-
I don't see how that's a recommendation from a government study task committee. That looks like it's
in its current form, it looks like a survey.
basically a
question.
referendum, yeah.
Right. So, I think that they're going to continue fleshing out what they need. But
So are they asking to have and obviously the warrant's still open, but are they asking to have a hold for a article that would address the idea of appointed treasurer and tax collector, or is it something else?
What number?
We're on number
Number 10. you're
10.
talking. But there was one or more.
Number 10 and number 18. And what was submitted to us is, does the town support changing the elected tax collector and treasurer positions to appointed? And right now, town council is saying that it looks to them as if it would be a non-binding resolution. But, you know,
Oh, because that's what they want to know. They want to ask that question as a non.
that's what it
Town
seems
meeting?
like right now until we
Why,
see.
we asked that question at a town meeting, and at least with respect to the treasurer, and we had a very close vote, and
But that was town meeting. There are these non-binding public opinion referenda questions that we can place on the ballot for an election in which all the inhabitants vote at the ballot box. And that may be what they're asking for.
well, it may be, but I guess if it is, I wouldn't support doing it that way, because I feel like we need it's a survey, we need to lead, and we also would hope that we would get a recommendation out of a committee that was set up to study whether there should be an elected treasurer, elected or appointed treasurer, elected or appointed treasurer, tax collector.
Right.
So
So my information on.
I assume I had heard they were working on a recommendation. I assume that's still what they want to do, but this is
Right.
just kind of a mystery the way it's presented.
Well, Kitty, I
She was here,
confirmed tonight, she still wants 2 placeholders in there. One related to a finance department or finance director, and then the other related to an appointed position.
All right. I mean, I'm
So-
sure they're working on something
Yeah.
that probably is going to look a lot better than this placeholder
Yeah.
item, so.
Yeah.
So that was number 18, was the
Number
placeholder.
10 and 18, yeah.
All right, so just a placeholder. All right, and now the beaver bylaw, this is again something that, that I guess I brought to you, David, but the idea would be, I have seen in other municipalities that they have a bylaw addressing what you do with beavers, and in fact, you have copied the North Andover bylaw, which is the one that got me thinking about this. What this does is it clarifies whose responsibility things are in, as far as the town is concerned, when the town is responsible, when private parties are responsible, the role of the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission. And my impression is we get a lot of staff time and questions, spent answering questions and dealing with these issues, and perhaps some of that could be streamlined, and information flow would be better for the community if we had a clear process that was established by a bylaw, that was based on state law, that would define what we do.
And I agree, because of it, each time a case comes up, it seems like we're starting from ground zero again. And it is a complicated law to follow, and having us adopt it more clearly in the bylaw, I think is a really good idea. It would really have helped in a number of situations.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think we probably need the Board of Health to weigh in on the bylaw, obviously.
And the Conservation
And the
Commission.
Conservation Commission. I think that we also need to have if it passes, are there budget ramifications that we need to factor in the current budgeting process? I don't know that there are any, but there might be.
I almost think it would be the opposite.
And there may
I
be-
almost think what this would do is clarify when, the
The
Concom
town's
and the Board
involved,
of Health
when-
don't need to be involved because it's a private issue,
Yeah.
and when they do need to be
Yeah,
involved.
and then the last thing would be what remedies if people don't comply, because in this example, it says, it's your problem, you fix it, and if they don't fix it, what happens?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So it's that sort of,
So
and it
that-
talks about a management plan that's ongoing and sticks with the land. Just, those are things that people will question, and I would question just from the, rough look.
Right, in the middle of the model, there's references to sewer pumping stations.
Yeah, so
So
that's
it's just a
an
model, we would have to
Yeah.
tweak it for Sherborn.
Yeah.
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 Was your point saying that if somebody is being aggrieved and their neighbor has a
No,
beaver
no,
problem?
it talks about Board of Health to notify responsible parties and direct that the property owner immediately resolve the problem consistent with Mass General laws, blah, blah, blah. But what are the teeth to make sure that the person does do that? Because
That's
That's a
actually an important
citation.
provision. We had one situation where someone's well was about to be underwater,
Yes.
and they were going to have to shut down and lose their water, but the dam was not on their property. It was on an adjacent piece of property. And the property owner could take the position, hey, it's not my problem, but the affected property owner can't go onto someone else's property to remove a beaver dam.
Yes.
So there's a clear need for coordination between two neighbors. And to some extent, this does that by allowing the Board of Health to say there is a health emergency on property A, so they can send a letter to property B to address the beaver problem on your property to alleviate the crises on
Yeah.
the other person's property.
And I believe that if there's, at some point, it can end up in a civil suit between,
Yeah, I mean, if
between the neighbors.
the person that
not-
gets a letter and says, great, thanks, but I'm not going to
Right.
do anything, then what's the remedy? That's
Right.
all.
Okay.
So we
Okay,
can,
that's good. There's, yeah.
Recreation.
I hope we get successful and finding, because I
Do you
think it's
wanna-
right, simplify it.
you want me to go ahead and type this sample up as a Sherborn sample?
We're going to want to tweak it some. Once you draft it up based on that, send it to me, and you and I will work on it,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
It was your idea, you should get credit for it.
Okay, so what are we doing with this Recreation Commission, David? What is this about?
Last year, when they passed the bylaws related to the town administrator, this is the one.
Yeah.
It kind of ended up putting Recreation Commission property under the auspices of the town administrator. Also in that bylaw, it put me as the town administrator as an ex officio on the Recreation Commission. So I think what this is doing is making recreation property similar to like library property and excluding it, that they are in control of the recreation property. It's not under the town administrator. And my involvement in those properties is as the ex officio person on their commission.
Why didn't we do it last year? Because I mean, that topic was raised in the process of
It was.
identifying those.
Yeah.
And so one fundamental question, the Recreation Commission does a great job and all that. I'm not picking on them, but technically, whose property is it and who maintains the
I think that was
property?
it. It was the town of Sherborn's property, which is devoted to recreational use. It's distinct from Conservation Commission has property that is its
Right,
own property.
right.
Selectmen.
The town's property is
Yeah.
not in the hands of a particular commission. We have town forest that is designated town forest. That's also the town's property, and it's designated town forest. But it's protected in that respect. So I don't know.
Municipal property under the selectmen, yeah?
So I think we would need to hear what governance had originally intended, or
Yeah.
why they didn't, why they continued with it after it was brought
So
up
do
last
you want to
year.
refer this to the governance committee?
Well, just for some just some background for where we were before and why we didn't do it. And then, but we still have to wrestle with, it's town property. The Recreation Commission does manage the use of the property. And they weigh in on, types of fertilizer, stuff like that, but they don't pay for the maintenance of the property.
Well, it
do
says they are. It says they're responsible for the maintenance, but I don't know.
That's the question I have.
I mean, we pay for the mowing,
Okay.
but they pay for, if they're going to replace the turf or,
Okay.
change the location of the fields or something.
Well, so here's an item that's very current, which is the flooding problem on Jamison Field. Is that something the Recreation Commission is, I mean, I know they're involved in it, they're aware of
Right.
it, but are they prepared to manage that process and deal with the school committee directly and resolve
Well,
that issue?
actually, I mean, the CM&D director worked directly with the Recreation Commission last year when
But the
this was an issue.
CM&G
because-
director is under the town administrator and the
Right.
Board of Selectmen, so,
Right, but the CM&D director was coordinating with Recreation because while it was CM&D's problem to deal with, on the surface, it was Recreation's programs that were occurring on
no,
top of
I
it.
get that, but I think I'm following up on Peter's point, which is, and you just sort of made a similar point, which is, CM&D isn't, I don't think they're out there doing a tree survey and a tree plan, but they are the ones who are charged with managing the fields. I think we have to find out more about this, the playing fields. Elliot, you have some
You
thoughts?
mentioned flooding at Jameson Field?
Yes.
What's the problem there?
There's apparently a lot of surplus of water from the storms the other day that may be going down now.
Yeah, in the spring, the ground freezes, and you'll get snow melt or heavy rain, and you'll get some large puddles, 1 acre apiece. But once the ground thaws, it's all sand under there, and as soon as that ground thaws, it's gone.
Okay.
So I think you'll find it's just a ground freeze problem or excessive rain like we've had this last
Had a lot of rain.
2 days. And I'm sure it'll be gone very quickly if the ground doesn't freeze first.
We already approved your permit. You're all set.
So on 12,
I've been watching these puddles for 80 years, so I can assure you they'll be gone.
okay. So number 12, we're not taking a position at this point, and we're going to ask government task force what they think about it.
Yeah, why
Okay.
it wasn't part of it. And even if they can't recall, we'd still have to wrestle with the issue of just what we were talking about.
Yeah, okay. Number 13.
Without getting into that in great detail, I would say that somebody has to pick the option, right?
Yeah,
We're looking at the
we're still in the
options
same
that we're still-
option issue.
Yeah,
Yeah, this looks like deja vu.
Yes.
We had a proposed article, this has to do with the Brewfest. We had a proposed article to deal with the Brewfest, and then our zoning guru over here, our chairman, pointed out that it maybe was a little too broad, needed to be narrowed. And so it was withdrawn, and now they've come back with like option A, option B, option C, and it's addressed to us. And I don't think we ought to be choosing all these.
Yeah, this is
No,
another.
no, that's a
Same
memo.
from back in September.
That's the memo from, when they were, it was kicked around, and remember they came in
Yeah.
and pulled it off the...
Yeah, so
they haven't moved
presumably
forward.
they'll have a article that has some wording in it that we can react to and the public can react to. But at this
Right.
point, we don't have any wording, it's just a placeholder on the,
Right.
okay, all right. So that's 13. 14, lot width measurement, this is the one you said they might withdraw?
Yeah, it's likely to be withdrawn
Okay.
on the lot width. And I concurred with Gino's thoughts on that, that there are a couple of instances currently in town where that's an issue, and it's just not good to bring something forth and to settle those issues.
I agree with you on
Just
that.
let the court settle it, and then we have a precedence in how. it
And
should
then we
be
can change it
decided.
after that if it makes sense to change it.
Right.
Okay, so this one's going to come out. Next is 15, revolving fund for trees.
That's
I love seeing tree things on the warrant.
brought forward from planning board, and I don't have a lot of information on, it's just about.
I
preserved
think I have an
trees on-
idea what this is about. Didn't we accept a grant, or a gift earlier this year from a citizen who was atoning for some
Yes.
planting sins by giving a contribution for tree planting? And it looks like the planning board has discovered, or someone has advised them, that we need a revolving fund in order to do that properly. That's what the justification reads, anyway.
So you were thinking it could be related to a grant for this purpose?
Well, that's what they've said. The town previously accepted donations for replacement trees until it learned that a revolving fund needs to be set up for that purpose.
Oh, I see.
So this would establish a revolving fund. This seems like an accounting article as much as anything. It involves a place to put money that somebody's giving the town, so I think I could probably support it.
Yeah, it's certainly putting it on the warrant.
Makes sense,
No
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, and I gotta double check, there are certain reasons that you can have a revolving fund.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to double check if that's a valid.
Otherwise, you're doing annual appropriations.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
If you don't spend it, it goes back to the general fund.
Exactly. Signing of town meeting warrant before advisory hearings.
These, I haven't spoken to the clerk about. They were submitted by the clerk. It looks like it would require the selectmen to actually sign the warrant 14 days prior to the advisory public hearing.
Well, I'm a great believer that the selectmen should sign the warrant, a month or two before a town meeting, and that we sometimes waited too long to sign the warrant. But I hesitate on this article for two reasons. Number one, state law says 7 days, and we're making it twice as long as state law. And the second is, let's say we have a scheduling problem and we can't meet, we're down to the last wire, and so we sign it 13 days before town meeting. Well, we're okay by state law, but we
This is
violated
advisory
bylaw.
public hearing. This is 14 days before advisory public hearing. That's not town meeting. This is even sooner.
Okay, that's even sooner. So if we miss it, if we break the bylaw,
Mm-hmm.
is the consequence then that the town meeting, all the actions taken at town meeting are no good, and we have to redo the town meeting?
I think you would have to repost a warrant with a full notification again.
But then you gotta change the, you gotta call another town, what if you've already called the town meeting?
You have to postpone it, put it on. David, what does the current bylaw say on this? Do you know? Do we have a current bylaw on this?
No, it's state law that there's a notification. It's different between special town meeting and annual town meeting.
The other interesting thing here is I'm not quite sure who this. Well, first of all, I'm not sure how this comes up. Whether there's a particular issue. I suspect the compressed schedule we had for the special town meeting was probably maybe one of the motivations here. But
I think it was from when we were doing the veterans article at last annual.
at the last town meeting. But what's interesting to me here is it says the town warrant shall be signed by the Board of Selectmen at least 14 days prior to the advisory public hearing. But it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem, isn't it? If we don't sign the warrant, then the advisory committee can't hold their public hearing. Presumably. I mean, who dictates when the advisory public hearing is? That's a certain number of days before town meeting. So this is a good idea. It's just not, to have this as a bylaw, to me, seems like it creates, at least worded like this, maybe it can be fixed so it's not, so we don't have those problems. But worded like this, it seems to create, all kinds of potential for difficulties or unforeseen consequences, as Paul pointed out.
And I haven't spoken to advisory about it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is trying to fix a problem that advisory may not have. I mean, I fully respect that they like to have information well in advance so they can review it, vet it, and so forth. That's the justification for this article. I get that, but I also think it's important, besides all that Mike and Paul have described in terms of timing and the confusion and so forth, is just that there may be situations that an opportunity for the town to vote on by such and such a town meeting is worth the extra effort of vetting that might take place at the 11th hour. And I think that flexibility, who knows what it is, that we, here we are going through these NOIs, and we're going to close the warrant on January, whatever it is here, in just a couple of weeks. But something might come up that we weren't smart about that can really benefit the taxpayers, the voters, the residents, and this restricts us from doing that. So
Well, it does, and it also, to point out that I didn't realize that was the article, the Veterans article last spring. The town rejected that article last
Well,
spring.
that was the thing, is that...
And so the process worked out so that
Right.
people didn't want to get jammed with that article then. It passed later in the fall, but we didn't need a bylaw to have that resolved.
Right, and then I think at the special town meeting, the timeframe where we were forced in that time schedule, that was a problem with advisory wanted time to deliberate on it. And they have a certain requirement, they got to get it out the door, so it was pinched between the amount of time the selectmen had in getting it to advisory. It was very very short. But advisory always has the option of saying, we don't have enough time to deliberate on this, we're taking no action.
Recommending against
Yeah.
it, taking no action.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next one, this was another one where I mean, I'm sure the town clerk she's explained some justification for it, but I'm sure she has examples of when this has been a hardship to her or to some other committee, but it seems to me that what the result of this will be is just simply having to reappoint people or calling into question whether decisions made by a board are valid if the person wasn't properly sworn in within the appointed time.
Well, I think there's a lot positive about what is trying to be accomplished, but I would be much more welcoming of volunteers. We want to have people come forward. They're not getting paid to be volunteers for the town. And if somebody decides, they're going to take their sailboat and go on a cruise for 16 days, bingo, they've been
I think that-
de-appointed
Well, I also,
automatically.
the town clerk is absent for a period of time for training, and I know people have run into that after the town elections, when it comes close after the town elections.
I think the 15 days is too short for, when you're talking about appointments to certain boards or whatever that might only meet once a month. But what's the true inconvenience? If
Yeah.
we're talking about an official, we try to get on day one that they start. If it's an employee like the building commissioner, we want them sworn in before they're going out in the field.
This is, maybe it's on that, but,
It is a good effort. I'm sure it's frustrating to not have people come in and get sworn in, and then...
and to have to follow up. Carol
To
does a
keep
good job
following
of
up, that's
following
a
up.
pain in the neck.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that the person that's appointed therefore can't really function in their role until they're sworn in, if I'm not mistaken. So the committee suffers. So there must be some means of helping this problem,
Maybe-
solving this problem, but I don't know what it is.
Maybe instead of if an appointed official is not qualified in this period, his appointment automatically terminates, that it should require a notification be sent out,
Well, here's a
giving
simple,
them 15 more days to respond. or
here's a
something.
simpler thing. To the extent that we're appointing somebody, when we put in the appointment letter, you are
You have to-
requested to go to the town
Yeah.
clerk's office and get
Doesn't that go in the letter? I think it does. It says you're required to be sworn in to accept
do.
this seat, but it doesn't say within a particular period of time,
So
does
why don't
it?
we say 15 days or 30 days or something like that in the letter, as opposed to having a bylaw that says you're terminated if you're off on your boat for extended period of time.
I don't see the boat part in here, Paul, but,
I would not like to automatically terminate people who've come forward and gone through some sort of process to get to that point.
right. Okay.
Yeah. But I could see if there was some sort of required notification to go out to
But we
them.
certainly want, the town clerk to be able to do her job, and the people to be active as quickly as they can be on a committee that they're appointed to. So, there's more to follow of discussion, I'm sure. from
Yeah, I mean, I would
clerk
have
on
to
this
say,
one. But we certainly
she's
have a lot
pretty
of
diligent
questions.
in following up with people.
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
from experience.
Have you ever, Paul, have you come across any state law that requires a certain time period to be sworn into a position you're appointed to?
No, but I think some of my appointment letters from the governor say, please get sworn in within 30 days or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think you lose your appointment if you don't get there.
I'll check our letters. I'm sure it says something. I know it tells them to come in, but I don't know if it sets forth a standard. We can simply add that.
So maybe the thing to do is, let's try being more diligent in our appointments and in the letters. See if that addresses the problem before we adopt a bylaw.
Well, this is true for any appointing authority, right? It wouldn't only be us, it would be whatever authority does an appointment. Maybe it is only us, I don't know. But I think other committees have some appointment authority.
I wonder if we've had any...
I guess the town
oopses.
moderator has appointment authority.
Sorry. I wonder if there have been any oopses where somebody's been appointed, gone to a committee, served on the committee, taken votes and so forth, but hadn't been sworn in.
Oh, no doubt.
Oops.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a formality, you're supposed to do it.
Mike, I think,
Pat?
if I'm not mistaken, that the letter somehow communicates that you cannot vote at the committee.
It does. The
Sworn
appointing
in
letter says
before
that.
you're-
That's
yeah,
right.
Right. So, if there's no meeting or something, I mean, usually it's a short term that it gives you before the next committee meeting to be sworn in. Doesn't that cover something like that?
I don't know. I'm sure Carol has her reasons for this, and it'll be good to hear from her at the appropriate time. Okay, this 18 we dealt with.
Yes.
19, where's 19?
It's an advisory placeholder.
Oh, this is a really good one. That's an excellent
That's me.
article.
I guess you wouldn't be part of a quorum if you're not sworn in.
That's the point.
So,
Okay.
at the time we did this, advisory was meeting, I think they met last night. She still wants to have the placeholder there, but I don't
Okay.
think that they voted to bring forth.
But
What
can
are
you
they
give us
talking
an
about?
idea? What
I'm
is
trying to remember.
Do they want to expand their size?
Oh, it was
Reduce-
regarding the school budget and setting up a revolving fund for something to do with early retirements. So there's like $25,000 in the
Oh.
Pine Hill School and $25,000 at regional. And Mary was thinking that instead of budgeting and appropriating that 50 grand each year that they may not need, if we set up a revolving fund to be used for the times when they need it, as opposed to raising and appropriating it every year.
And going back into, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So they're still going to talk about that.
Gotcha.
We don't know if that will end up an article.
Gotcha.
Okay. Citizen petition placeholder, we've heard from Harley on his ideas, and if he brings forth some articles, this would be a placeholder for those.
Has there been communication with him?
I gave him and I meant to attach it to this, the letter that I sent him with my recommendations on how to proceed on each one of his items. And, we still need to get together
Okay.
in person.
All right, town center water option placeholders, they both say sewer, David. I think one would be water and one would be sewer.
Yes.
Okay, and I think, not sure if we meet next Monday, or maybe it's a week from Monday.
Oh, for the water committee?
Water committee, yeah. Then we have a bunch of capital items for Pine Hill, including drainage improvements, interestingly.
But they bundled that, right? This is all part of that 5-year
Yes.
plan. This is 1 year of the 5-year plan. And the question would be how this number and what they're talking about relates to what they projected last year for this year. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That would be a question I'd have, and I'm sure Frank and the crowd would be
Okay.
able to explain that, plus the
My
mitigation
question,
of the water flooding issue if there's a real problem.
my question is that all my towns are focusing on security improvements with, lockout systems and lobbies that are bulletproof, and it's like entering, trying to think of an analogy, but like entering a courthouse, you first go into an area
It's
where...
like walking to the police station. Right?
Well, more, because they have a room there, but there's like an antechamber, and then there are all these new things that are out on the market that with key lock-in systems. You want the receptionist to be behind the wall. So all those improvements, I'm seeing them being worked on and addressed in all these towns, and all these improvements that they're talking about here don't include that. And I want to ask the question, have all the security improvements, like I want to be sure there's only one door to Pine Hill that people can get in and out of. Because I've been through so many meetings in which and as a member of the school committee, but here, but in other towns that talk about making sure that all the other entrances are basically emergency exits out and not for entry, and you have to go through a central entry point. So when I see all these projects, you know, air handling systems and drainage improvements and windows and shelving and all that kind of stuff, I haven't seen anything here about the security improvements. Maybe they're being funded by grants and we don't need to be involved with them, and maybe they're being done, or maybe the school is already there.
We've implemented some. I'm not at liberty to say which they are. We've had our discussions about them in our executive sessions. We took into account the advice that the chief of police provided for us, and we've implemented a number of security things based on that, including entrances into the building and the security of those entrances and the buzz-in ability for people to come in and so on. And beyond that, I don't want to say too much more, but we have worked significantly on improvement of the security system.
Is there...
Most of that last year, so that's why it's not in this year.
Okay, so the amount requested here in the description, there isn't sort of a hidden element for security in this amount. It's not described.
There's no hidden number in there. Those numbers are for what they're indicating.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know, Paul, you may have the same comments on
On the
the
region,
region, I don't
yeah.
know.
And again, I sit through all these meetings in other towns, and they're implementing not only structural changes, but training for like the ALICE program, which deal with when you have an armed intruder in the school, training people. It takes money to do all these things. And there's nothing in here about security at the region either. So I'm just hoping that it's being addressed, because where I come from as a parent, as a citizen, is I'd want to see first dollar spent on security and make sure that the kids are safe before we talk about restriping a parking lot. That's the region's request.
That's an excellent point, and I'll bring that up to, so we can discuss it at our next meeting, so we can make sure that we are still on top of all of that. Probably the training aspects and training the educators in case of armed intruders and so on.
So I have two questions on the regional one. One is, I know how it fits into the prior 5-year plan, and to the extent it's different, just to better understand, understanding why the differences are, so that they may factor that in before. The other question is, where are we at in the IMA? What's the status of that?
Didn't a draft go around? I think, I didn't get a chance to read it, but I think
I didn't
the
see
draft
the
went around
draft.
last week.
I remember seeing some emails, but I don't remember seeing the draft.
Okay. All right. I'll check emails and circulate it if I have it.
Yeah, because, right, wasn't one of the key points that last year we did the 1 year, it was a 1 year.
Yeah, and this year would be the same,
Same.
the idea is the same structure, but for a multiple year period, more than 1 year.
For more than 1 year.
That was the request, so I'm expecting
Okay,
to see that. That was the
that's what I
request.
wanted to know.
The town of Dover and the school committee both asked for that, and the idea was, if we're comfortable doing that, we've seen how it worked for 1 year, to, get a few more years.
Yeah, so I guess the question is how the funding works.
Yeah, so I think we
I
look
look forward
at
to
it on
knowing.
the agenda,
Yes, I look forward to that
agenda
yeah.
and ask, talk about it.
Well, that ties into the reference here that they expect this funding to go through June of 2020. So they're planning to have town meeting vote funds that they are going to spend over a 5-year period. So maybe it will be that we need an IMA that would cover the same 5-year period
For this amount.
for this amount.
Yeah. Versus an open-ended IMA So I think that's all part of
That
that
raises an
agenda.
interesting question too, though, because if it's a capital item and it's not going to be purchased for a few years, and the split is different between the schools a few
Right.
years from now, we've locked in either favorably or unfavorably several years in advance. So,
Those are all parts of things we need.
yeah.
It did come in. It came in December 3rd at like 10 p.m. at night. So there is a draft plan.
Yeah, okay, I thought I saw something flash
Yeah.
through.
Um,
So can we put it on for next week? For next Thursday, Dave?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so I've sent it to you and Paul.
Oh, just now, good.
Excellent. Town hall parking lot and access road enhancement. See Frank, thanks for coming in.
Right.
This looked pretty good, actually, when I looked at it.
See, I look at this one. Thi- Here's how my mind sometimes works. This article really causes a discussion about many big things.
Yes.
Sewer and water, the use of the land that we've purchased over there and what we're doing with it, and what we could do with it, and how that relates to affordable housing, and, you know, all sorts of things. So it prompts a meatier discussion than just having additional parking and an alternative access. But just talking about alternative access, I would want to know what other options there might be for access alternatives, including, you know, what, there's a tree that they didn't take down for the road that's there by the police station. That's one of the reasons why there's not enough room to get through and all that. Can the tree come down, or a pole moved or something?
I think what we
Can we-
heard from the chief was he doesn't want anybody going in that road.
I understand that, but I think there's still a question I'd like to know more, because one of the things was there's a bottleneck there, and that was one of the driving factors for not having people go through. Are there other ways, you know, whether there's other land, if one tried to keep the parcel that's there free for future use, are there other access routes that one could take on other parts of the land that the town owns on the campus? So those are things that I'd want to know, but I have no skin in the game, I just want to know those. I think that parcel prompts many possibilities of discussion, particularly when you throw in potential future sewer and water and all that you can do with that, or should do, you know, consider doing with it. So,
But just to add to your list, later on, the chair is going to get to an article about expanding the library.
exactly.
And I would ask the question, is this plan and this proposal consistent with what the state has approved for plans for the library?
This is driven by that, Paul. This is
It
driven.
is driven by?
Yeah, this is, my understanding is this is driven, this or something like this is necessary in part because the library addition and the state terms for the library addition require a certain number of dedicated parking spaces, and we simply don't have those spaces and enough spaces to have town hall meetings without expanding the parking. So if that venue is used for, you know, what, community events or large gatherings or meetings of some sort, and there are also, you know, a full house here with planning board and selectmen, you're going to have people, you know, parking in the middle of the road and parking up Maple Street and hiking in and everything else. And so that's one reason for trying to rationalize and expand the parking. The access road is in part to provide the secondary access. Well, I guess it's entirely to provide a secondary access, but in part that is because of the difficulty of having only one access here and having to go through a very major intersection, which is a dangerous intersection. And at least indirectly, I've heard that some people, you know, who might not be as comfortable driving are particularly uncomfortable driving through that intersection.
No, I get all that, and so, to that point, I guess I would expect at some point in the process on this thing that we will have had the Public Safety Committee and Traffic Safety weigh
Absolutely.
in
Yep.
on the merits
And I think
and
that's
the
supposed to be
justification
done,
for
yes.
this.
Yeah, no, it hasn't
Yeah.
finished all the vetting that
I
needs to
got
be
that.
done.
Yeah.
let's see.
And a dollar amount.
Well, I think I think that originally we were thinking that we would have to just get some engineering money to study it, and because this really hasn't been looked at scientifically by anybody. And then I think somebody mentioned that we should bring in a plan that included a request for construction money. And,
Okay. We
so
haven't figured that out yet, right?
We haven't determined that,
Okay.
no. But the parking lot expansion is what has been kicked around for, quite a while. This new access piece, that's only come forward since closing off the police access
Right,
road.
and it probably wouldn't be necessary if the police access weren't closed off, but
Right.
we're stuck with what we've got.
Right, so if you weren't going to do that piece, the only thing is the economy of scale. If you are expanding the parking lot, then there might be a little savings to doing that road now. But you could, if you had an overflow some night and the police were put on notice that you were going to use that road as an exit with a police officer present to exit the traffic, that might work too.
I think you're optimistic.
Otherwise, if you're going to build the road there, I don't know if you've read the book, If You Give a Moose a Muffin.
No.
High on my list, David, yes. You have
Do tell us what
4-year-olds?
happens when you give a
Well, if you
Muslim-
give a moose a muffin, he's going to want something to drink. So if you build this road, you're going to want to do something with it. Because you have a vacant lot there, and now this road is perfectly accessing this lot. So what are you going to do with the lot? But
You don't have to do something.
You don't
with it.
have to do anything with it, but now you have a vacant lot with a road through it. It seems like it could be used for something.
5-story parking garage.
Yeah, I'm not
Well,
sure,
I
I'm
think
not, also
that's
not
the
sure
big
this
issue.
is drawn to scale, to be honest with you.
No, it's not.
This looks very wide. Okay, let's go on to traffic and pedestrian control system by CM&D and Traffic Safety, $225,000 requested
I didn't
for a
understand.
new traffic light control system and pedestrian crossing signals. This is down by the school?
Yes.
This is?
This
I
was-
think we remember hearing from Ed or somebody that was an outdated, about to give up kind of traffic light, right?
I think he gave a heads up 2 years ago, and then
Yep.
last year, he submitted something for it, and we pulled it out and to put it off a year.
This
So
is the traffic light at 16 and
Yes.
27?
Right.
Apparently it's old.
But,
And-
but in the justification, or further, in the justification is also describing updating sidewalks.
Well, it's an
So
intersection
there's-
improvement.
There's a near $250,000 project here. I mean, that's a lot of money for a traffic light, but I don't know what.
But we can
I don't
use
know
chapter
about
90
traffic.
for that.
Well, we should ask him more about it. I'm curious what a synchronized light system does when we only have one light.
Where it's synchronizing.
Synchronized lights.
I think it's sides of it.
Yeah, Route
Okay.
16 and
Yeah.
27, we're synchronized
South Natick.
downtown Natick and South Natick.
I was, originally, he had a plan for, the light control system, and I asked if we're doing that, then let's try to get rid of the rusted poles and...
Are these are low energy, I assume, LED lights, so
Yeah, I
we
think that we
have
did
some
the
energy
upgrade this
savings and, okay.
Yeah. But the poles and the fixtures seem to be all rotted out,
Yep.
rusted out, and it could be a nice
And
intersection.
here's a question, if we do this light, are we committing to that traffic structure, traffic pattern
No.
for forevermore? No.
I think so.
Okay, I mean, I don't know, I'm just,
Something to ask Ed, but, or
Yeah.
whoever,
But
traffic
on
safety.
this article and the next one, I think I mentioned before that Governor-elect Baker has said he's going to release $100 million of Chapter 90
Yeah.
funds. We were able to get the appropriation increased over the last few years from 155 million to 200 million to now 300 million, and the governor held back 100 million because there wasn't enough money for all the transportation projects in the state. Well, Baker says he's going to release that 100 million, and then 3 or 4 months later, he's going to release the full 300 million for 2018. 2000s, well, the 16, I guess.
So he hasn't read all the way to the end of his briefing book where they tell him the state's in a budget deficit?
There were cuts made that bring us substantially in balance, and revenues have come in better than expected in
That's
the
good news.
last month.
That's excellent.
But what I'm trying to say is the town of Sherborn is going to get a double dividend of a additional payment in January and an additional payment added to the normal payment. And so those funds would cover Article 27 and possibly most of Article 26.
And this is money that we haven't spent already, because I know we're behind on some of our reimbursements already. This is
Right
new
now.
money.
This is
Okay.
new, this is new,
Great.
fresh money.
Good. Okay, so next one is dump trucks. The purchase of 2 one-ton dump trucks.
They don't actually call them dump trucks anymore. There was some jokes going on about a dump truck having an accident, causing a 17-mile backup on the Southeast Expressway, and they started calling it a dumb truck
Dump truck.
as opposed to a dump truck. But there's
Uh.
actually a technical name for dump trucks.
Okay, you can bring that, you should bring that back to us next meeting, Paul. Can we task you with finding out what that name is and letting us know? Okay, so what's the, is this from last year? Is this the, sort of part of the same program that
Same capital.
Ed presented last year?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have anything more on?
I'll take
This
a
one?
note. to-
No, just need to know more about the design and so forth, yeah. Oh,
Okay, the dump
Or,
trucks.
yeah, I just want to, he's got to summarize that equipment story. He did it late in the game, he needs to do that right up front,
Yeah.
right? What he's got, why he needs this, how it works, and how he's getting around some other stuff, because he has a good story to tell.
Yeah, these are replacements of existing trucks,
Yeah.
and you always ask the question, what's wrong with the existing trucks? How many miles are on them?
That's right.
Repair costs, blah, blah.
Hopefully, we'll get a sort of a advance
Yeah.
description of that stuff rather than after we ask the question. Okay. Transfer station fencing, this is recycling is asking for this. It looks pretty straightforward.
This is, yeah, we're looking at this issue. I still need to talk to Bridget in Conservation to understand if our newly paved road is, newly paved surface up there is causing concerns about runoff into the wetlands or,
Well, this is the fence, though. This is not even the
This is
runoff.
for litter blowing. And as far as the runoff is concerned, you had said at a prior meeting that the paving at the transfer station was the base coat,
Correct.
and that you were going to put in drainage improvements in the spring of 2015 and then do a final coat. So the drainage improvements, whatever they were, I don't remember all the details right now. Those drainage improvements haven't been done yet.
right.
This article is not about drainage, it's about literally blowing into wetlands, and that could lead to an alteration of a wetland in violation of the State Wetlands Protection Act, so they want something to catch wind-blown
Well, I know,
material.
Bridget and I have spoken several times about when she's gone up and just checked things out. It's a kind of a constant of stuff ending up in the weeds off to the side.
Okay, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but is there a price attached to it?
Not yet, because I have to figure out
Let's keep
What-
moving.
if she's talking a full fence, or are we talking a smaller?
Well, it says it's a big, tall, ugly fence in her write-up. Maintain and fix the town hydrants. This one is, this one looks pretty compelling, the way it's described.
But there's one thing about the Forest Street hydrant that he talks about replacing. They want to dig down 20 feet and cap the pipe at that end, which is expensive and difficult, and it is capped by the state a little further down.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really are concerned that Farm Pond is going to drain out through this thing, the cheaper and easier route is to go to Farm Pond
Cap it at that end.
and cap it at the beginning. You
Yeah.
don't need any excavation.
But then does the water not get to the
There goes
hydrant?
your dry hydrant.
Then the water does not get to the dry hydrant.
So isn't that the point?
But I've seen some analysis that trying to get water up from 20 feet down is going to produce a very slow trickle.
So we don't think that dry hydrant's effective?
No.
Yeah, the advice I've been told is that even if we did this, it would not be an effective hydrant because of the depth. It's too great a depth to produce the kind of pressure that you need.
So you have an expensive capping.
Well, we got to ask Tim
Yeah.
about this. Yes, the chief
Yeah.
about his thoughts on that, but those are good questions to bring up, that's for sure.
Where are we at with the fire truck purchase?
Picking a color still, we get to pick the color, and we want the leather seats.
I think the contract has gone out to,
There's one more thing to consider with that capping. I mean, they've been playing with that whole pipe that comes from the pump house, and it's broken at the pump house. When the pump house went and slid a little bit, it cracked the pipe at the connection, and they would have to go in somehow and fix it there, or, because the water coming through that pipe is bringing beer cans and fish right now, and they don't have the pressure. But they've had an engineer study it, and they feel that they can still use the hydrant, I think, if they start with capping it off there. I don't think there's any chance you're going to drain Farm Pond, okay? But they are looking at that whole system, so you might want to explore a little further with them as to what the intention is to cap that pipe.
the ladder truck, we have the vendor's contract with town council and our proposed contract with town council to iron out which one are we going to make them sign ours or us sign
Oh, I see.
theirs with.
So we've identified the truck and the features of the truck and all of
Yeah,
that.
the,
It's just the deal of doing the
Yeah,
purchase.
yeah, and, we know the vendor. It's not like, it's a different kind of vendor, and the vendor provided us a price lower than what we expected, so I think it was around 800 or something, 850, and provides them with the tank that they wanted, and all the features they wanted, the heavy-duty chassis, and the two proposals were $5,000 or $6,000 apart.
wow.
So we received two proposals.
Okay.
It was an easy decision on which one to go with.
Has anybody looked at the number of fires we have in Sherborn? How many fires do we have in Sherborn?
Not very many.
And so we spend a lot of money to cover the situation where we would have not many fires. Wouldn't it be useful to kind of make our truck available to surrounding communities to kind of cover the cost of it in some way? Maybe like,
Well, basically, I mean, all the towns are under mutual aid
Yeah.
at no cost, so if we wanted,
yeah,
if we
but-
needed half the fleet from Framingham, it's going to come to us at no cost. If they need our ladder truck, it's going to them at no cost.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about there's an $800,000 cost, and if you can have it, let's say it responds to 20 fires a year, I don't know how many they are, but whatever the number is, why not have it respond to a larger population, such as, surrounding 4 communities? So instead of 4 communities all buying the same truck for $800,000, that they reimburse us, let's say there's 4 communities, they reimburse us for 3/4 of the expense and have it available to all 4 communities.
I think the chief had looked at a number of options, and Hopkinton, Ashland, and one other town has been working with MAPC for, I think, almost 2 years now, and they're not at the point that it would even be a system like that. They're still maintaining their own individual equipment. A different option would be to form a bigger fire district beyond the borders of the town. And that's sort of like, kind of like a New York model where they, it's a fire protection district.
Yeah, we
And-
have several of those in Massachusetts.
Oh, really? Must
We
be
have
out
one down
west.
in the Cape.
Oh, okay.
It does quite well.
Yeah.
But
So
like 4
that's-
communities get together and they make one fire department.
Right.
I think we're getting way off track and
Yeah.
probably should get back to going
So-
through these notices.
One thing I will note that with the ladder truck, it's,
That's not on this either.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, we have questions, but I'd really like to get through this. It's getting late and long meeting. What is this next one, David? This looks very,
This one,
way different than what we were told last year.
the police chief had a proposal that he talked to me about, and I said, well, let's run it by advisory, let's run it by capital, and see if this is anything that we want to spend more time on. Basically, it's setting up a model that, like the state police model, where the vehicle is assigned to the employee, and it extends the life of the vehicle, and it also gives you some extra protection. And if you play out the expected life of an assigned vehicle to a single employee versus us replacing a vehicle every 3 years, it seems to have a positive savings, but it's a
Do we-
savings
do-
over 10 years.
Do we have to do all 10 at once? You know, if you were to do this with 2 and then do 2 every year for 5 years?
I think that's kind of the model we've been doing, is
No, I mean, do it as a take, I mean, you're talking about a take-home of how many vehicles? 16 vehicles or something like that?
it's 9.
Well, it's 9 plus the existing vehicles, isn't it?
Well, I don't know how many of the existing ones would still be
Well,
maintained.
is everybody taking home a vehicle?
I believe every.
Well, we don't want a bunch of vehicles parking in the police parking lot that we paid for when everybody has their own vehicle already. So I would hope they're going to use the ones that they've already got.
You mean their personal vehicles?
I'm talking about police vehicles. I thought that's what this was. Maybe I'm missing the point.
Everybody doesn't have a vehicle right now.
Understood.
Okay.
But we have how many vehicles as a town?
I think there are 6 over there.
Okay.
So,
And how many police officers do we have who would have a vehicle under this program?
there would be like, I think 12 or something like that.
All right, so we'd be using the 3 newest of the 6 and these 9? Is that the
Something like
idea?
that.
So
Yeah,
what
but-
I'm suggesting is, why would you have to phase it in all at once? Why wouldn't you buy 2 vehicles and try it out with 2 people?
Well, the chief is very clever with ways to save money, and I'd like to hear him.
Yeah, I
talk
think he's
about
got a
this.
pretty compelling story and analysis. I haven't seen it. I mean,
Right.
he's briefed me on
The
going
idea.
down this approach. And there are case studies out there that models and so forth. So
I don't
there's-
have any
so-
question about
so-
that, you'll save some money, but it's
Yeah.
also a big nut in 1 year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and when you get to the big nut, it's a big nut of $1.5 million of stuff before talking about the library one. So,
Yeah.
so that's a challenge for everybody here of that nut. So, yes, the chief I'm sure has a pretty compelling story that he can tell, will tell, with good visual aids and so forth. I think we'll all learn from it, and the discussion will be very healthy, even if it doesn't get very strong
Yeah, we could
legs.
do it with the fire department if it works for the police department. Everybody take home a fire truck.
If this isn't, I'm not aware
There
of
you go.
any community in Massachusetts that does this on a
Park.
but out of state It's
Yeah.
very common. Usually the bigger the area where you have, 80% of your police force living within the, whatever the district is,
Yep.
that it makes more sense. But, what people will have to weigh is, do you want to send, your car back, the Sherborn police cruiser back to Rhode Island, where somebody
This
lives,
is
or
a state law that you have to live within 50 miles of the community.
it still puts you in another state.
True.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other county, everything. But
Okay.
it's common for state police and sheriff's departments and that kind of thing.
We just amended the law saying that we can collectively bargain what the limit is as to how far they can live from the community.
There we go.
So we could set a limit of 5 miles, 2 miles.
Okay. So hearing assisted devices at the police station, that's number 32 on our list.
Yeah, I think the more of these hearing assisted devices,
Seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is pretty,
It also seems like the type of thing that there's probably grants out there for, I don't know, but
yeah. Good question.
good point, Peter.
Okay, the next one is town building surge and lighting.
This
What's,
seems like a no-brainer too.
Well, this goes back to, we've submitted 2 or 3 claims over the last couple of years for what
lightning
we were
damage.
assuming were lightning hits. It turns out there's some.
I just thought we were the unluckiest town hall in the world, is that what it is?
It wasn't town hall, it was specifically the police department.
Oh, really?
That was getting
Yeah.
hit.
Okay.
And they say lightning doesn't strike twice, but it's not necessarily direct hits of the building that a lightning rod would solve. It's hitting in that area and going through their
Grounds, yeah.
system, where we're on a different circuit, and for some reason they're getting hit. So when we started looking around from the Public Safety Committee, none of the buildings have any sort of surge protection at the entrance to the building. And so right now, we're looking at, is it common, or new buildings have this on it, but how many, older buildings? And is it a trend that municipalities are updating their buildings to get this surge protection, or?
Well, if any building needs it, it'll be the police station, because we want them to be able to respond, and if they get hit by lightning and all their computers are fried, and there's,
Well, we've had 2 events where it's knocked out systems. It knocked out the video camera system in this last hit, so that was an insurance claim. And then the previous one, it was another computer system in there. I just can't remember what it was charged of. It wasn't the dispatch system, but, I don't know what's protecting that, but it's a level of protection that we're getting more information on.
seems to me to be a no-brainer, as I think someone said earlier.
okay, so replacement of carpet and removal of the cabinet in the town clerk's office.
This is one that we've been pushing for years, and every year we hear, oh, we're going to find some money and we're going to do it, and yet here we are.
Well, we did, last year's budget, when we approved for this year, we were planning on doing the carpet. We're not sure whether they're going to be able to do it yet, but we might be able to do it before we have to go to town meeting. We would know better,
Huh.
so.
But this really commits us to, I remember, we talked about that we had planned to do it out of the current budget, so if you're able to do it, that's great.
Right.
But I would say we're all committed to getting it done, one way or another.
And we can do it in, a smaller piece if we
Right.
needed to.
Piecemeal,
with
you mean,
available
type thing,
funds.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we have had some strains on the current year.
Yes.
Okay, are we up to the library now?
Yeah?
Yep.
Sherborn Library renovation and expansion.
This is exciting that they've gotten this far along, that they're ready for these critical votes. They have a state grant, which is 3.6 million. They've raised 2.8 million in fundraising, which is very, very
It's
impressive.
very impressive.
Incredible.
So they're well over 6.4 million that they have, and the total project cost is 8.4, so essentially they need $1 million to do a fairly significant building project. Amazing.
Yeah, it's looking for $1 million commitment from the town. That's really huge. I haven't seen that kind of support for a public project in a long time.
Okay. Well, we'll hear from them when they come in. And codification of the municipal code.
This was something that, when I first started, I heard from Gino and the town clerk saying that we should be doing this to get, so everything is lined up easily searchable, can be searched online easier than what it is, and we can find things going back through history easier. And they, at the time, they had a quote, so this year, I took it off last year, and then this year I said if one of them wanted to bring it forward,
Yeah.
then I would support them in it. And so that's why the town clerk volunteered to bring this article forward.
And this is something that more and more communities are doing, and it makes it very easy to find things online if
We're
you're
going to-
working or living in a particular community and you want to understand what the laws are. So, and it would avoid us having to do annual printouts of all the, we may want to keep some on hand still, but
Right.
in other words, not everybody's going to need their own printout. It's going to be kept up to date. I'm sure our town clerk will keep things very up to date, and it'll be a good way to maintain this. This will come with an annual cost, though. It's not a one-time. This is the first codification, but it'll need to be
Right.
updated every year.
Right, and it's one of those things you're going to, at some point, you're going to end up doing it. And each year that goes by, there's more work to do when you finally do it.
A little more.
And would we do this as a capital item? I mean, that's
Well, that's my
below the
next question.
threshold, you know?
I think it's going to be,
I mean, as opposed to
Round.
putting it in the town clerk's budget as a one-time
Or
Yeah.
free cash.
item.
I've seen people use free cash.
Yeah,
I haven't met with the capital committee on it yet, but
Gotcha.
it did, I at first had it as just a standalone article, and then I moved it into capital, so
Yeah,
I
but-
kind of agree it's not really a capital item.
yeah, I mean, it's under the 10,000 threshold of the bylaws, but the other point that
It's also not
Mike
an
just
a- it's
made
not an
is
asset
the
either.
recurring, yeah, it's not an asset, and then you have this, it's a service to be provided, and therefore appropriation might make better sense through the budget, and particularly given that there's going to be recurring annual, budget ramifications. Might as well
I
set
don't
it
think
up
it's a
now.
big number, but,
Probably
it
not
would be
big,
helpful
but-
to figure out, David, what the renewal fees are with these services, whether it's MuniCode or whoever it is that we would choose as a vendor.
it's a renewal and update.
Yeah.
Well, as a lawyer, I'm a great believer in laws.
Yeah, the
Gotta
merits
find
of it,
them.
it's just where
Make it
it
available.
belongs, yeah,
Yeah.
how you pay for it.
Dover has this, and it's, well used in Dover, and if you want to find a regulation or a bylaw over there, whether it's zoning or something to do with driveways or, their town administration, it's right there. It's available from everybody's computer.
We could have found Sherborn Community Housing Corporation.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think that stuff's in the codification, but it's, it doesn't have minutes and things. I mean, that's something else for people to realize. It doesn't, these services don't do that level. That's something else, and that's something, we may at some point want to improve our capacity to do that, get minutes up sooner and so forth, make sure all the boards have their minutes up. But that's a different issue. And this is the last article we have listed here, which is a GIS. Mass GIS requires towns to be compliant with state standard level 3. It's $10,000. There's a state grant that's unavailable to Sherborn. I wonder why that is. But in any case, this is another thing where it has utility beyond whatever the state is requiring or what the Board of Assessors themselves may use, because it becomes a public resource where people can, go through the database and get accurate reads on GIS. And I think I mentioned at a prior meeting, the state has mapped and included a whole lot of data sets in their GIS program that's available online, where you can find out a lot of stuff about all the communities in the state, including Sherborn, down to an individual property level. So
So would this fall in the same boat, not a capital?
I don't think this is a capital item either.
Okay. Would it be it would be its own separate article?
This is, it's sort of software, I think,
I mean,
unless it's scanning the maps electronically. I can't really tell what this is.
and we had talked at one time about, I don't know if we did or if Mary and I did, about having a separate technology budget where we can pull some of these things out of different places and actually budget for them.
Well, that would be something that might belong in a budget such as that if you had one.
So again, that's $2.5 million bucks. So we'll have to figure out how that sells in Sherborn or plays in Peoria.
What's 2.5 million, all the capital items?
Well, that list, whether they're even including those last couple items, so it's over $2.5 million
We can
bucks.
get 800,000 to trade in the new fire truck, I bet.
When we sell that parcel of land, we want to put the little access road
Yeah.
on, and we got it covered.
Subject to an easement and access.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, any more business? Are we?
No, I guess because we're not talking the departmental budgets, but one key question is when we'd see a model. And I'm sure advisory looked at a preliminary model that didn't even reflect any budgets because the budgets haven't gone in.
Right.
But it might have been a working model that they might have had and looked
Yeah.
at. And then if that is available,
We had
that
one
would be
mid-December
useful.
last year, I think, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we did, just to give us a frame of reference, if nothing else. And then when the budgets get in, which are going to happen roundabout when Ruth is, walking out with her golden handshake, when I say that, I'm jokingly,
Yeah, I was thinking, what did you
how will we get
negotiate?
the gold watch or the Timex watch, how do we, how are we going to get a model? And I know you've probably got that figured out. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, because be
I
curious to see that sooner than later.
I'll request the most recent one from Ben Williams,
There you
and then
go.
we'll send that to you. I talked to today, Deb Seifring. She'll
Yes.
be continuing to help advisory in that short term, 3 or 4 weeks, whatever it is, in January. She's worked on the model before. She's put the model together, and that
Yeah,
should
she's
be-
great, yeah,
should be
that's
fine.
great, yeah.
Can I just kind of summarize what our next step is on the warrant? I would say that, like I said at the beginning, there's like too many items and they're kind of disorganized. So where do we go from here? We've had a good discussion about who we want to hear from and who should be consulted on these different articles, but what is the action step that's next going to happen on this warrant?
Well, these are the NOIs. We don't have the warrant language yet from anybody, do we? It's hard to schedule somebody for a meeting if there's not actual language to talk about.
You can talk in general without reviewing the article language, but even after the
But then
the
we have to
warrant
just
closes,
review
we don't.
the article language later, right?
Yeah. So, what is the time frame that you want the sponsors to come in and?
Yeah, that's because for example, we just said we'd like to hear from Chief Thompson about the proposal.
How about next week we hear from Chief Thompson about the proposal? That's going to be a big one that takes a lot of explaining, and do we have some time on the agenda on the 18th, David?
I'll add it in.
And I think he's, presumably he's thought a lot about this. I would think he has, and.
I think he's presented already, right, to the
Okay.
capital budget?
So there-
and
so there you go. So-
advisory.
so it's not too
So I'm
early
sure
for us
he's
to-
got his story
Yeah.
already
I'm pretty sure I
ready to
talked
go.
to him about bringing his budget in on the 18th.
That's great.
Oh.
Good, let's do that then.
Look at.
All right, so we'll kick it off.
But that's 1 out of 37. I
Well,
mean,
we'll still,
So,
but yeah, but,
so the idea is to start bringing in proponents
Don't you
that
think?
we think that are ready to go?
do you think? That makes
Sounds
sense?
like it would
Yeah,
make life
absolutely.
easier later on.
Yeah.
And some of them, you can communicate with them the questions and the things that we certainly want to know about that
Right.
we've talked about tonight.
No,
So-
no. What about what would be a target date for having wrapped up reviewing all these items with the sponsors?
When's the advisory hearing?
I mean, we were still working on some of the items even after advisory.
I know,
Yeah.
but we want to probably work backwards from that. That's what, is that early April?
They're in March.
That's in
Late
March.
March.
It's
Saturday
in
one?
March.
Yeah, late
March
March.
21st.
Yeah, so March 21st, so,
And then Monday, March 23rd.
so you figure, March 21st, we figure we have 7 or 8 meetings before then,
Okay,
don't you think?
yeah. And for budgets, they're all due December 31st, so you would
So
start
then we start
reviewing
scheduling
them.
people, and the ones who have warrant articles to go along with it, we
the
can
same
talk to
time.
them first, maybe.
Okay.
Or however you think it's best to structure it, David. I know you're balancing a lot of things.
I would think the library's ready to go with a presentation. They know the amount. Maybe we could have them in earlier rather than later.
And I know, at one point, I thought they wanted to come in and present to us anyway, even outside of the budget context, but I never heard from anybody, and I don't know if you...
No,
did
we
either.
had them on an agenda, and then they were pulled off.
Okay.
They pulled themselves off.
Okay.
For
Well,
a later date.
why don't you find out if they're ready? I mean, that's
Yeah.
another good suggestion.
Do you remember last year when we completed budget reviews?
No, but let's all go back and look at our calendar. I don't remember offhand.
Our budget reviews for the selectmen's budgets?
Yeah, and all the budgets. I mean,
What do you mean all the budget?
No.
You mean all the other departments?
yeah, are there any that you wanted to see come in? Actually, you didn't have any other budgets. They were all under selectmen. Those are the only people that came in.
Well, heard the school committees. We heard well, the police, I guess, are under us, but we did hear the school committees.
School committee is working, trying to make sure that everybody gets the same message in one presentation.
Yeah, they want a joint meeting, and they had a couple of dates proposed.
Yeah,
I thought we talked about one of the dates even.
yeah.
Okay. David, do we have a warrant, a payroll, not a payroll, yeah, payroll warrant today, and
Yes, they're on your desk.
yeah, but I mean, so we're not signing them, but there was an item that I wanted you to hang on to until we can figure some more things out.
It would be good if you voted to hold the item.
Okay, yeah, that's why I'm
Okay.
raising that now.
Yeah.
So I would propose that we hold the Leland Farms item until we can make more sense of what's going on over there and where this fits in.
Oh, happy to accommodate you, so I'll second the motion.
Okay, you okay with that too?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right, good. All in favor? Aye. Did you have any you wanted held, or did you get your questions answered?
Well, I got my questions answered. The only thing I thought about being a little bit of a jerk was to get that analysis that I keep asking for on the sped out-of-district spending to, because we know what we're spending for tuitions at various schools, and so that we should be able to annualize the cost of that, add them all up, and compare it to what has been budgeted. And likewise, what we're looking at for circuit breaker reimbursement. And that gives us a good sense of the magnitude of, or not, of any turnbacks to contemplate. And we know that it was substantial last fiscal year. And if this simple analysis shows us that it's not the $500,000 or whatever it is that we were looking at last year, that it's
Right.
$12, that's good to know. I don't know what we'll do with that knowledge, but I think it's important to know.
Have we,
But at
Is
the
there a
same
re-
time, I'm not going to, but I remember last year, at one point, I said, hold payment.
right,
I'm not going to do that, and I don't know how hard I want to push, because because we're trying to get all sorts of other stuff out of individual, particularly Ruth, who's got a couple of weeks left here, so I don't want to
Right.
put too much of a burden, but
Is-
I
but is
have been
this-
asking for,
is this a,
Who does that analysis that you're looking for?
Ruth did it last year, yeah,
so
The
we,
schools.
no.
so we did have that analysis last year?
Yeah, it took multiple iterations, but we got it, it was okay.
Okay.
But at least it gave us a good sense of, wow, there's a big turnback that's going to be coming down the road.
And Mary doesn't have this info.
No, Mary doesn't have it. And so I don't know, maybe we want to ask the school personnel to help us on that, or
So
something.
if, I'll
Or
try to
maybe-
search for what it was.
And I'll see what I can dig out.
If-
It wasn't perfect,
Right.
but it was, you know.
But at least that's
Okay.
a place to start, and I can
Yes.
start getting it pulled together. Yeah.
Well, thanks for pulling all this together, David. This was a
Yeah, this is great.
productive exercise.
Right, we're ahead of the game here, I think, on this.
Only until next week, when we're behind the game again.
That's right. No, but at least we won't, there's not a lot of surprises.
No. All right, good. Do we have a
Yeah.
motion to adjourn?
We just get smarter. So,
Oh, Pat Cassell has something to ask.
Are you planning to meet at all during the Christmas and New Year's weeks? No.
only Paul
The
invites us to
Meeting
the,
on the 18th.
Yeah, but then.
We're probably not meeting Christmas Day or New Year's Day, and I don't know that we need to meet in between.
I had from December 18th to January 8th.
It's a long haul, but it
That's
may
why I
be,
asked.
maybe we want something earlier in the week of the 8th, but let's decide that next week.
Maybe
Or do you have a constraint on that, or?
January 1st.
Right. What I'm saying is, maybe we want to meet on the following Tuesday or something, just to keep things moving, I don't know.
December 30th.
Oh, December 30th is in between, I don't know about meeting in between, if people aren't around or whatever.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular week to be gone.
Yeah, unless something comes up, if something comes up, we'll need to call
We
an
could do
audible.
that, instead of waiting till Thursday, the 8th, try to do, like Monday,
Well, that's what I was wondering, if we
the 5th.
toss something into a different, yeah, okay, so let's talk about that next week. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Just one
One more thing.
You had asked before, and I didn't hear a clear answer. Usually, every meeting, we approve the town administrator's salary, so he doesn't have to approve his own salary. Don't we need to
I think
do
that's
that?
on the table too, David, isn't it, downstairs? I thought we
is on
signed
the
it last
table.
last week, but I guess we got another one to sign this week?
Yeah, because, so this is for next week's.
This is this week and next week, and last week was what?
Oh,
the 2 weeks?
last week one was that day.
It was
They
just
came
that
out
day.
that day.
I got you, okay.
This one is for next Thursday.
All right, so we sign it now and you get paid next
You could
Thursday.
vote to sign it, yeah. I was speaking to a CPA, so I'm going to hit Barbara up again for a different way of handling that. That's, I think, is adequate. The CPA thinks it's adequate.
But should we vote
But
just
you should
Yeah,
vote it
it's a
now.
good point. Okay, do we have a motion?
to approve? Yes.
Okay,
second.
okay, all in favor? All right, we finally agreed on something. David gets paid. This is good. Okay, now do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, okay, we're done. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for